Enter the Gungeon is likely one of my most played games of all time. The combat is satisfying to master, dodging and weaving through impossible patterns of bullets and collecting a staggering number of guns, fitting for the name. One thing that often stands out about Gungeon, even to those unfamiliar with its gameplay, is the sheer number of literary, film, and video game references contained therein. I decided to catalog every reference that I could sniff out in this game, and that script ended up being over 23,000 words long. So I hope you'll enjoy this monumental pop culture melting pot that is every reference in Enter the Gungeon. Before we begin, I'd like to give a shout out to this video's sponsor, Buyee. Buyee is a proxy service that allows you to buy anything you want from Japanese services such as Yahoo Auctions Japan, Mercari, and many others. There's a lot of Japanese products that never get released over here in the United States, which might mean that you're missing out on references that you don't even know about. There's currently a promotion with Mercari, where if you're a first-time user, you can get a coupon for 4,000 yen off of your international shipping, and you can use a link in my description to sign up for Buyee and get 2,000 yen off of your first purchase. The first section of this video will cover the characters of the Gungeon. Starting with the Marine, their armor is very reminiscent of armors seen in the Halo, Doom, and Warhammer 40k franchises, with the name the Marine potentially being a reference to Warhammer 40k's Ultramarines. The pose that the Marine strikes when entering a boss battle is also very reminiscent of the classic Doom guy pose from that game. When you reach the Marine's past, you're transported to a ship where there's an experiment going on where an interdimensional horror then opens a portal through to the real world. This may be a reference to the portal to Hell opened in the Doom series, or the resonance cascade created by the Combine in the Half-Life games. After beating the past, you unlock an alternate costume for each Gungeoneer, with the Marine's costume being very reminiscent of the black iron armor set found in the Dark Souls games. The pilot's archetype of a roguish space captain who is on the run from the law is very reminiscent of Han Solo or Malcolm Reynolds from the Firefly series. In the pilot's past, he has a friend named Z who is a blue bird who flies alongside him on missions. This might be a reference to Falco Lombardi from the Star Fox franchise. The ship that you fight against in the pilot's past, the Absolution, and the Imperial Hegemony of Man might be a reference to the Imperium of Man found in the Warhammer 40k franchise. The woman who appears in the boss title card for the ship is likely a reference to Mina Gladstone, the CEO of the Hegemony of Man in Dan Simmons' Hyperion books. The HM Absolution also bears a resemblance to the first and second bosses of Demon Star, and the ability to spawn large fleets of ships that then fly downwards could be a reference to Space Invaders. The Convict doesn't have any standout references until reaching their past. The theme that starts off this past is reminiscent of the theme from The Godfather, and after defeating Black Stash, the escape sequence is a reference to Hotline Miami, with the vehicle that the convict escapes in looking very reminiscent of the DeLorean from the Back to the Future movies. The alt costume for this character might be a reference to Mad Max, with very thorny and leathery appearances. The last of the four default Gungeoneers is the Hunter. The pose that they strike when entering boss fights resembles the pose on the Outlaw Josie Wales art by Clint Eastwood. The belt buckle in this sprite resembles Sam Stone from Serious Sam, which is another game published by Devolver Digital. The theme of the Hunter's past is based on Wolfenstein, with the eagle attack from the Wolfenclaw's monster and the name of Dr. Wolfenclaw being nods to that game as well. The Hunter's original fate of being put in a cryopod and waking in the future might be a reference to what happens to Philip J. Fry in the Futurama TV show. The robot is the first of the secret unlockable Gungeoneers. The idea of a robot with a CRT for a face has popped up in multiple pieces of media, one of them being the Securitrons from Fallout New Vegas. The entire sequence of the robot's past is a reference to the Terminator films, with the last human being a reference to Sarah Connor and the general theme of going back in time to kill a specific human being being the plot of that movie. The robot's alt costume being a metal skeleton with red eyes is the famous skinless Terminator. The minions that the last human summons resemble the T-800 from the Terminator film. When they die, her minions turn into forest creatures like squirrels, referencing Sonic the Hedgehog. The boot-up sequence at the beginning of the past is the same as the Terminators, and the theme playing in the past is reminiscent of the Terminator 2 main theme. The leader of the robots, EMP-R0R, resembles HAL 9000 from Arthur C. Clarke's A Space Odyssey. The robots using speech like ye in the robot's past may be a reference to a gag from Futurama.
Fear not, for I shall assist ye.
Robots don't say ye.
EMP-R0R having a plasma globe with a wire coming off of it may be a reference to Futurama's jacking in, which is a sort of electric robot drug. The robot on EMP-R0R's side resembles a sentinel from The Matrix. There are many graffiti marks in the arena in this past, with many different robots from various media properties showing up, including Mettaton from Undertale, a Reaper from Mass Effect, the Robotology symbol from Futurama, the Jailbot from Super Jail, Crow T Robot and Tom Servo from Mystery Science Theater 3000, a Cylon from Battlestar Galactica, Atlas and Peabody from Portal 2, an E-Tank symbol from Mega Man, the 3x3 grid of squares with a W in the center from Mega Man Stage Select, Magnemite from Pokemon, Neo's Pod from The Matrix, and the Butter Passing Robot from Rick and Morty. There is also the Combine symbol from the Half-Life series, as well as the Talos Principle. When chatting with various NPCs, they can give nicknames to the Gungeoneers. One of the robot's different nicknames is Colonel Clink, which is a reference to Hogan's Heroes. Calling the robot Number 4 may be a reference to Short Circuit's Number 5. The Bullet is another secret character. The Bullet's past is an elaborate Link to the Past reference. The track for the Bullet's past is even called A Bullet to the Past. Aghanim is a reference to Aghanim from Link to the Past, with his Shadow Magician palette that you can find in the Gungeon being reminiscent of the copies of Aghanim you fight multiple times throughout that game. His introduction phrase, "Or do you think you can stop me? Go ahead on," may be a reference to 1985's Final Justice, where Thomas Jefferson Geronimo says,
"You think you can take me? Go ahead on."
Aghanim's pattern of needing to fire orbs at the player that they then reflect is a staple of the Zelda series, often seen in multiple boss fights such as against Phantom Ganon in Ocarina of Time. The second boss in this pass, Ganon, is a reference to Ganon from the Zelda series, with his green pig form being reminiscent of many incarnations of the villain. The bullet patterns are copied directly from Ganon's appearance in A Link to the Past, and the files show him as Ganondorf, which is a reference to Zelda's Ganondorf. The victory screen for the Bullet's past is very reminiscent of the Triforce room from A Link to the Past. After beating the Bullet's past, the player unlocks an alt costume of a pink bunny, which is the appearance Link takes after he enters the Dark World without a moon pearl. The fact that you use a mirror to change into this skin is a reference to A Link to the Past's magic mirror, which can take the player between the dark and light world. The last secret character with any references is the Gunslinger, whose entire outfit resembles Clint Eastwood in A Fistful of Dollars, Justice from Afro Samurai, or potentially the cover art of Stephen King's The Gunslinger: The Dark Tower. Now onto the figurative meat and potatoes of Gungeon, the guns. The dart gun carried by the cultists firing yellow foam darts could be a reference to any number of toy gun brands, most likely Nerf, as the Nerf Maverick Rev 6 features a very similar shape and capacity of 6 darts. The Blasphemy's ability to fire projectiles at full health is a recurring power of the Zelda series known as Sword Beams, which also fire when Link is at full health. The variant used in the Bullet's past may be a reference to the iconic wooden sword that Link is given at the beginning of The Legend of Zelda. The shotgun shell-turned-baseball bat Casey is likely a reference to the 1888 poem by Ernest Thayer called Casey at Bat, which is also the namesake of the Casey bat found in Earthbound. This also has the additional layered pun of the bat being a large shotgun casing. The Ammonomicon line, "Nothing can happen until you swing the bat," is from the anime Fooly Cooly, and the tagline "Batting 50" is a reference to 50 caliber bullets as well as the batting average stat of players in baseball. In real-life baseball, a .5 batting average would actually be considered legendarily good, with Ty Cobb's average of .3662 being the highest in recorded history. The pea-shooter gun is a play on the phrase pea shooter, referring to a gun that shoots very small bullets and as such isn't very threatening. This gun may also be a reference to the pea-shooter plant from the game Plants vs. Zombies, or to a level Lord of the Fries from Earthworm Jim 3D. The 38 Special having the tagline "For the Inquisitive" is a reference to it appearing in many detective stories, which also features in the names of its synergies. This particular one is potentially a reference to Max Payne, with the ability to fire faster after dodging. The Derringer is a real-life pistol that were made to discreetly fit in a pocket or sleeve, hence why it retreats into the character's sleeve when reloading. There's a synergy here with the dueling pistol called Dead Prez, which may get its name from being a hip-hop act, as well as being the weapon that Abraham Lincoln was assassinated with by John Wilkes Booth. The Gunslinger's Slinger is possibly a Borderlands reference, which has the Teddy Orr brand of guns that function as throwable grenades when out of ammo. The Tranq gun has a reminiscent appearance of the specific tranquilizer guns found in the Metal Gear Solid games. The synergy name I Need Scissors 61 is a reference to the corrupted Colonel Campbell AI at the end of Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, with the gun changing to look even more like the tranquilizer pistol from that game. The Emmentaler is a portmanteau of the word eliminator and Emmental, a kind of Swiss cheese. When reloading it, a red shell appears around the gun which is then peeled away, which is an iconic feature of Baby Bell cheese which has a red wax shell. The Hyperlight Blaster's name and mechanics are references to the game Hyperlight Drifter, with the tagline "Skill honed sharp" in the Ammonomicon being a quote from one of the game's monoliths. The Ammonomicon entry also mentions that it's meant to be used alongside a blade, which would normally be how you refill your gun in Hyperlight Drifter, so instead it has been modified to work with itself. The Boxing Glove has the mechanic of building up 3 stars and then unleashing a higher damage punch in direct reference to the mechanic of the Punch-Out series. The tagline Pistol Hondo is a play on the name Piston Honda, one of the opponents in most Punch-Out titles, with his name being changed to Piston Hondo to avoid copyright issues in later games. The Makarov is one of a few real-life guns found in the Gungeon, with the tagline The People's Gun, an entry stating that it's no better or worse than any other gun is a reference to Communist Russia, which was the time period and place where the Makarov was created. The synergy name No Odd Job is a reference to GoldenEye 007, where the player could play as Oddjob. Specifically saying No Odd Job may be a reference to the fact that players tend to ban playing as him because he has a smaller hitbox and therefore an unfair advantage. The M1911 is also a real gun, used by Vincent Vega in Pulp Fiction. This is referenced with the synergy name Pulp Gungeon. The Magnum is yet another real gun, and the fact that it is referred to as unusually filthy and the tagline 5 shots or 6 is a reference to the film Dirty Harry. The reload roll synergy may be a reference to Overwatch's Cassidy, who can reload his revolver while rolling. The name of the Wicked Sister synergy in its alternate appearance might be a reference to the Gentleman Bastard series, where the Wicked Sisters are twin hatchets that serve as weapons for Gene Tannen, one of the main protagonists. The Colt 1851 is a real gun that references the good, the bad, and the ugly, with its Ammonomicon description and tagline You Dig, and the synergy name Two Kinds of People, which is a line from the movie There Are Two Kinds of People, those with guns and those that dig. The SAA is an abbreviation of the Colt Single Action Army, which is a real gun. The tagline Exhilarating Reload Time is a reference to the line from Metal Gear Solid's Revolver Ocelot, who uses this gun and says, the ability to bounce shots off of walls is additionally a skill displayed by Revolver Ocelot, and the synergy Pretty Good is part of Revolver Ocelot's You're Pretty Good catchphrase. Finally, the spin when reloading is a reference to Revolver Ocelot's tendency to twirl his guns. The Colt 45 is a play off of the Colt 45, a real handgun, with the addition of ice powers making for an ice pun. Saturday Night Special is a play on the phrase Saturday Night Special, which refers to a cheap handgun usually intended to make a hasty crime. The Wise Bullet Crying synergy spawns Yetis that resemble those found in another dodge roll game, Fort Parker's Holiday Profit Hike. The Polaris has the appearance and mechanics of the Polar Star, a gun from the game Cave Story. The Ammonomicon mentions that it's marked with 2 small tick marks, which would form the name of the main playable character, quote. The synergy name Square Brace refers to the character Curly Brace, who gives the player the machine gun which the alternate appearance of the Polaris closely resembles. The name Polaris is shared by the actual North Star, hence the synergy with Stutz Star being called Star Buddies. The Jolter's name and appearance reference the Bolter rifles from Warhammer 40k, which are usually used by Space Marines but can be used by all sorts of different factions. The synergy name There Is Only War is a reference to the iconic Warhammer 40k tagline, In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. The Dungeon Eagle is a reference to the Desert Eagle, a real-world pistol. The Ammonomicon remark that it's known more for its image than its efficacy comes from the fact that the Desert Eagle is featured in many movies, even if not accurately. The synergy name Don't Hoot the Messenger is a play on the phrase Don't Shoot the Messenger alongside the noise that owls make. The Grey Mauser is a pun on the real gun known as a Mauser C96, combined with the thief known as the Grey Mouser from the books by Fritz Leiber, which is where it also gets its stealth and ability to steal from shops from. The Vorpal gun is a reference to the Vorpal sword from Lewis Carroll's poem Jabberwocky. Vorpal is one of the many nonsense words in that poem that seemingly means a very sharp sword. Vorpal is also used as a quality of magic items in Dungeons & Dragons. Weapons that have the Vorpal quality will instantly decapitate foes on the natural 20 when attacking, often referred to as a critical hit. This is also reflected by the potential for massive damage and the tagline, Criticalibur. The High Caliber may be a reference to Soul Calibur or Soul Reaver, with the appearance and description of the gun matching a sword found in the former and the ability to consume souls of enemies from Soul Reaver. The synergy name Caliber Kapow Uboom Kabang is referencing the phrase Funglui Mugulnaf Cthulhu Rilye Waganagul Fatagan from H.P. Lovecraft's Call of Cthulhu. The Shella-gun with the Ammonomicon tagline Circle of Death is also the name of a Dungeons & Dragons spell. The Ammonomicon also mentions Revolvations chapter 22, verse 12, which is the notation that the Bible uses to mark chapters and verses. Revolvations is seemingly a pun on the Book of Revelations and a revolver pistol. The synergy name Dawn of the Gun Dead is a play on the zombie film Dawn of the Dead. The dueling pistol is modeled after a number of real-life flintlock pistols, with the synergy name Hell Singing likely being in reference to Van Helsing, the vampire hunter from Bram Stoker's Dracula. The AU gun, with its appearance and name, are modeled after the Golden Gun from the James Bond movie The Man with the Golden Gun, with AU being the elemental symbol for gold on the periodic table. The tagline "Some assembly required" refers to the fact that the Golden Gun is assembled from various seemingly innocuous items, and the high damage and description of killing with a single shot refer to the GoldenEye 007 version of this gun that instantly kills its targets. The ammo count of 22 is likely in reference to 22 karat gold, which is 1 carat lower than the Golden Gun from the movie, which perhaps ties into the Ammonomicon calling it close to living up to the legends, but not quite. The Big Iron shares its name with a song by Marty Robbins, which was prominently featured in the video game Fallout New Vegas. The synergy name Iron Slug may be a reference to the game Metal Slug as well. The composite gun's name and appearance are references to 1993's In the Line of Fire, which is also the name of one of its synergies. The pig item being able to trigger the synergy is a reference to Marvin Boggs' stuffed pig in the movie Red. Both Marvin Boggs and the assassin in the Line of Fire who uses this gun were played by John Malkovich. The flare gun mimics real flare guns that aren't exactly intended for combat. The tagline "Over Here" may be a reference to the flare used to lead the T-Rex in Jurassic Park. The Knight's gun has the appearance of the shovel wielded by Shovel Knight in their series, with the ability to dig up money and items being a mechanic in those games. The tagline "Plowshare" is likely a reference to the phrase "beat swords to plowshares," which is used to mean devoting resources toward peaceful ends or turning weapons into tools for good. It may also be a reference to a Magic the Gathering card that also references the same phrase, "swords to plowshares." The Ammonomicon refers to the shovel being a gift from a race of sentient yachts, which is a reference to the studio behind Shovel Knight, Yacht Club Games. The name of the Shield Knight synergy is a play on the name of Shovel Knight's partner, Shield Knight. The capitalization of the gunner and the mechanic are references to Goner. The synergy name Whale of a Time is potentially a reference to Sally, the whale that spawns at the end of stages in Goner. The big shotgun is a reference to real-life shotguns, which in comparison to this one are typically smaller, making this a big shotgun relatively speaking. This may be a reference to the big shotgun from Metal Slug, the synergy name Big Shotgun Gun being a play on the BFG initialism from the Doom series. Old Goldie may be a play on the term Golden Oldie, which usually refers to particularly good media from long ago, usually songs or movies. The synergy name The Ecstasy of Gold is a reference to the song of the same name by Ennio Morricone. Calling the shotgun a masterwork in the Ammonomicon entry may be a D&D reference to masterwork items, which were high-quality weapons that still didn't have any magical properties. The Winchester has the tagline "Better than a box of roses," which is a reference to Terminator 2 when the Terminator pulls a Winchester shotgun out of a box of roses. The reload animation is also a reference to how the Terminator wields the gun in the movie. The Rattler is likely a reference to the poem of the same name, which also features a snake similar to the one coiled around the gun. The tagline "Snakes on a Gun" is also a play on the title of the movie Snakes on a Plane, and the Twin Snakes synergy is likely a reference to Metal Gear Solid with the twins Solid Snake and Liquid Snake. The Bubble Blaster might be a reference to Bub from the Bubble Bobble series. The synergy of the name Bubble Trouble may be a reference to the game of the same name. The mechanics of this gun are very reminiscent of the Bubble Gun from Cave Story. The elephant gun was often used by safari hunters for hunting elephants, which is referenced by the wordplay of the tagline, "Shoots elephants." The Ammonomicon mentions making pianos out of teeth, which is a reference to piano keys being for a time made from elephant tusks, which are essentially long teeth. This could also be a reference to Looney Tunes' Elmer Fudd, who hunts with a very similar weapon, and the character's teeth being used as piano keys appears as a gag in multiple Looney Tunes animations. The Ammonomicon calling it an inelegant weapon for a less civilized age may be an indictment of poaching, and is also a mirroring of the line in Star Wars where Obi-Wan calls the lightsaber an elegant weapon for a more civilized age. The elephant in the room synergy is a pun on the phrase elephant in the room, meaning something impossible to ignore. The gun returns to the other meaning of its tagline, "Shoots elephants," and begins to fire pink round elephants. These elephants also resemble Fan-Fan, an enemy that appears in the Kirby series. The Tangler has a synergy named Spangbab, which is a reference to SpongeBob SquarePants, who, among other traits, is rectangular despite being a sea sponge. The tagline CQC of the Void Shotgun is an initialism that stands for Close Quarters Combat. The appearance of this weapon is a reference to the Junker Legionnaire shotgun from Void 1.1, a tabletop game played with miniatures. The name and appearance of the mass shotgun are a reference to Mass Effect, which is also where the synergy name Massive Effect comes from. The tagline "My Favorite Gun" is potentially a reference to the line from Mass Effect 2 where a player can sponsor a store on the Citadel, which will cause the announcements in the store to say,
"I'm Commander Shepard, and this is my favorite store on the Citadel."
The synergy Mass Cutter with the Mine Cutter gun is a reference to Dead Space, and a reference to the fact that both guns are from games published by Electronic Arts. The Shot Grub's tagline "No Worries" is a reference to The Lion King, where Timon and Pumbaa's Hakuna Matata philosophy allows them to live a life free of worry while eating bugs. The Gilded Hydra is another weapon to refer to revolvations, this time Chapter 2, Verse 1, with the passage, "These are the words of Caliber, she who grips the 7 sidearms in her hands and walks among the 6 loaded chambers." This is a modified version of Revelation chapter 2 verse 1, which reads, "These are the words of him who holds the 7 stars in his right hand and walks among the 7 golden lampstands." The mechanic of gaining more magazine size when taking damage is likely a reference to the Lernaean Hydra, which was fought by Heracles and was able to grow back new heads when old ones were cut off if they were not cauterized first with fire. The blunderbuss's tagline and mention that you can load it with anything refers to old accounts that state that blunderbusses could be loaded with scrap metal, rocks, or wood, which would fire but damage the gun. The Ammonomicon also mentions using a blunderbuss against hungry giants, but working poorly against sly dragons. This is a reference to the story of Farmer Giles of Ham by J.R.R. Tolkien. The pulse cannon has a name and appearance reminiscent of the M4 1A pulse rifle seen in Aliens. The Siren has a synergy Brave New World, which may be a reference to DC's Aquaman, or a reference to The Little Mermaid, which features a similar blue and yellow fish flounder spawned by the synergy, and the coloration of the gun also matching the coloration of Ariel in that movie. The Zilla shotgun mentions Zilla Industries, which is the same company found in the Shadow Warrior games, which also features a shotgun that can fire 4 barrels at once. This is also where the Shadow Warrior synergy comes from. The Icebreaker's 2 freezing shots followed by a metal slug is a reference to the Titanic, and the tagline "Never Let Go" is a reference to the final scene of the film of the same name. The color scheme and its synergy "It's Your Destiny" also make it a reference to the icebreaker found in Destiny, which its synergy appearance mimics. The Membrane has bouncy shots and features the Absent-Minded synergy, which is a reference to the movie The Absent-Minded Professor, which features a similar bouncy goop in the form of flubber. The Huntsman is potentially a reference to the Hunter Axe from Bloodborne. The Insight synergy has the same name as a stat found in Bloodborne that allows players to perceive the Great Ones. The synergy named the Red Hood is a reference to the tale of Little Red Riding Hood, which features a huntsman and a wolf. The blooper's name, tagline, and Ammonomicon entry mentioning going back in time to kill your past self are all references to the movie Looper, which had a tagline of "Close your loop." The JK-47 has the tagline Substitute and the initial appearance of an AK-47. This is a reference to the tagline "Accept no substitutes" of the AK-47 in this game. The name of AK being replaced with JK often stands for "just kidding" in text. The synergy name The Killing Joke is a reference to a Batman comic with the same name that was also adapted into a movie. The bow's charged arrows emitting a golden glow may be a reference to the game Titan Souls, or the light arrow, an item found in multiple Zelda games. The synergy name Sniper Wolf is likely a reference to Sniper Wolf, a boss from the Metal Gear Solid franchise. The sticky crossbow has very similar mechanics that are a reference to the game Teleglitch with the AGL grenade launcher. The shot bow featuring the tagline of Teleporter Accident, as well as the idea of two objects becoming fused by going through a teleporter at the same time, is a reference to George Langeland's short story, The Fly. This is also the source of the fly-like appearance in the Another Accident synergy. The crescent crossbow has a synergy named Land Among the Stars and the tagline Moonshot, which refer to the phrase "shoot for the moon, and if you miss, you'll land among the stars." The term moonshot was also used during the Apollo moon missions by NASA and the media. The gunbow may be a reference to the Monster Hunter series, which features weapons known as bowguns. The Clob's name and synergies are all references to the Clob in GoldenEye 007, with the Ammonomicon referencing how notoriously bad the gun is in that game as well. The Clobbering Time synergy is potentially a reference to the Thing from Fantastic Four, who has the same catchphrase, "It's clobbering time." The Thompson submachine gun has the tagline, "Mia, see?" which is a reference to the line from the 1931 film Little Caesar. The future Gangster synergy's appearance may be a reference to the laser RCW found in Fallout New Vegas, which has a similar appearance to a Thompson but fires lasers. The AK-47 has a tagline, "Accept no substitutes," which is a reference to the film Jackie Brown. The synergy name AK-47 Island Form is likely a reference to the Pokemon series, which uses form with an E to denote alternates within the same Pokemon species. Island Form in particular is likely a reference to the Alolan Form Pokemon found in Pokemon Sun and Moon, which take place on a series of islands. The strafe gun having a registered trademark in its name and the mechanics of the gun are in reference to the nail gun upgrade for the machine gun in the game Strafe, another game published by Devolver Digital. Similarly, the synergy Cool Kids Club implies that by being published by Devolver, Gungeon and Strafe are in some sort of exclusive better club than other games. The name of the AK-47's Achy Breaky synergy is meant to sound like the name Achy Breaky Heart by Don Van Tress and popularized by Billy Ray Cyrus. The Stone Dome's tagline, "Big Head Mode," might be a reference to many early 3D games that would often have Easter eggs that would make the heads of all characters larger for comedic effect. The gun's appearance could be a reference to 1974's Zardoz, in which the titular Zardoz was a giant stone head that flew around and spewed guns from its mouth. The cultists of Zardoz would similarly wear stone masks over their heads. The Crown of Guns item likely gets its name from the similar item found in Nuclear Throne, which is a passive item rather than a weapon. The synergy name Blast Crown is also the name of another Nuclear Throne item. The idea of a crown made of weaponry may come from the Wheel of Time series with the Crown of Swords. The synergy Alas Sniperion turns the crown into a new gun called the Moonlight Tiara, which is reminiscent of that worn by Sailor Moon and fires moonbeams. The synergy name Too Heavy may be in reference to a quote from King Henry IV, "Heavy is the head that wears the crown." The M16's tagline Underslung may be a reference to the movie Predator, whose main character Dutch always fires the M16 from the hip. The synergy name might be a reference to the song Fortunate Son, with the song and all guns included being associated with the Vietnam War. The name might also stem from the fact that the M1, M1911, and M16 all have the letter M in their name. The name, effect, and appearance of the combined rifle are all a reference to the Overwatch Standard Issue Pulse Rifle from Half-Life 2. The name is a play on the Combine from Half-Life, and the 10 Days' War is a reference to the 7-Hour War that occurred in the Half-Life universe. The Zorgun's name and description both reference Zorg in his ZF-1 series of weapons from the Fifth Element. The tagline "Don't push the red button" refers to the obvious red button, which is a self-destruct feature of the said weapons. The fat line and its effect of firing tachyon particles is likely a reference to the Universal Communication Network in Dan Simmons' Hyperion, which was also called the fat line. The appearance of the vertebrae K-47 may be a reference to the 1999 film Existence, in which a character is able to form a gun out of bones. The MAC-10's tagline, "Never End," is a reference to the lyric in Biggie Smalls' song Come On. The synergy name Iroquois is likely a reference to Snake Plissken from Escape from New York, with Iroquois Pliskin being used as an alias by Solid Snake in the Metal Gear series, who is also heavily inspired by Snake Plissken. The triple gun's name and mechanics are a reference to the anime Trigun, which reference the main protagonist Vash's revolver, machine gun, and angel arm form respectively. The Heck Blaster heavily resembles the Plasma Blaster used by Earthworm Jim in their games, and uses the tagline "Whoa Nelly," which is Earthworm Jim's catchphrase. The synergy Great Queen Ant is likely a reference to the final boss of those games, and the synergy Dr. Worm could be a reference to the song by They Might Be Giants of the same name. The Patriot's name and appearance are the same as the gun wielded by the boss in Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, with the tagline Gun Eater riffing on the tagline of that game. The name of the synergy What a Thrill is a reference to the opening line of the song Snake Eater that plays in Metal Gear Solid 3, and the Gunderlord synergy is a reference to Destiny's Thunderlord, an exotic machine gun that has a similar increasing fire rate mechanic. The AC-15's name and tagline Armor Class Non-Zero may be in reference to the Armor Class or AC stat in Dungeons & Dragons, which represents how difficult a character is to damage. The Ammonomicon's mention of an unintuitive system of math may be also referencing another armor system in D&D's 2nd edition called THAC-0, which was eschewed in later editions in favor of a simpler system. The synergy name of this gun, Armored Core, may be a play on the name of the Armored Core series of games. The Vulcan Cannon's appearance is a reference to the real-life M61A1 Vulcan, which is a Gatling-style rotary cannon. The name may also be a play on the Vulcan Mega Bolter found in the 40K franchise, and the synergy name Vulcan Raven is a reference to Metal Gear Solid's character Vulcan Raven, who also wields a similar weapon. The Secret Twin synergy is also a Metal Gear Solid reference to Liquid Snake, Solid Snake's secret twin. The synergy Not Quite As Mini and the Vulcan Cannon's alternate appearance are likely a reference to Team Fortress 2's Heavy and their minigun. The tagline Boundless Slaughter is part of Vulcan Raven's last words to Snake, saying that in the natural world there is no such thing as boundless slaughter. The Gungeon's name is a play on the game's own name, with Gungeon portmanteaued with engine. The engine pun is further played with the What Engine Do You Use synergy with the item Unity, which is the same name as the Unity engine that Gungeon was developed in. The Gungeon is also a reference to a mechanic found in the game Luftrausers, in which the player can combine parts of their plane, in this case a combination of a gun and an engine. The Contractual Obligation synergy name is likely a reference to the publishing contract that Devolver Digital has with Dodge Roll Games for the creation of Enter the Gungeon. The name may imply that there was some sort of mandatory obligation to include a synergy with the Devolver. The name and appearance of the Predator are a reference to the film of the same name, with the comment from the Ammonomicon stating that gun dead don't generally bleed, which plays off the line, "If it bleeds, we can kill it." The Dragon Fire has a similar appearance to the Jolter, which may mean it's a reference to Warhammer 40k's bolter rifles. This may be a reference to a certain type of ammo for the bolter, Dragonfire bolts. The sniper rifle has the tagline Scope Creep, which is a business term that refers to a project getting larger and larger in scope while it is being worked on, making finishing steadily move away while the work is being done. The Synergy 360 Yes Scope refers to no-scoping, where a player with a sniper rifle shoots without looking down the scope, and a 360 no-scope being a 360-degree spin, then firing without looking where you're aiming, in theory making the kill more impressive. The AWP, or AWP, is a rifle that stands for Arctic Warfare Police, which is referenced by its Arctic Warfare synergy, which specifically represents the Asimov skin in Counter-Strike Global Offensive, which is in turn based on the Accuracy International Arctic Warfare Sniper Rifle. The last line in the Ammonomicon entry mentions that some believe it fires faster if you put it away after every shot. This is a reference to older versions of Counter-Strike, where you could fire your sniper rifle faster by switching weapons and skipping the reload animation. The tagline Noob Cannon and the name are also Counter-Strike reference, where its high power made it popular with new players and often got it banned, which is also referenced in the entry. The name, shape, and description of the M1 as being the most famous rifle and its distinctive reload sound all point towards this being an M1 Garand, which was the main semi-automatic rifle used by the United States in World War II. The synergy name M1 Multi-Tool is likely a reference to Destiny's MIDA Multi-Tool, which similarly grants a speed boost and alters the appearance to look like Destiny's Scout Rifle. The Winchester rifle's tagline, Guns and Deviltry, and the synergy of the same name are a reference to Fritz Leiber's novel Swords and Deviltry. The Corsair having the synergy name Unsinkable and the cruise liners fired when holding the Glacier gun are all references to the ship Titanic, which sank after hitting an iceberg. The railgun synergy name Dead Cell is a reference to the Metal Gear Solid 2 character Fortune, who also wields a railgun. The synergy's name is a play on Fortune's squad being called the Dead Cell. The tagline Calibrating may be a reference to Garrus Vakarian of Mass Effect, who is known for really enjoying calibrating their guns. The prototype railgun's appearance and mechanics are reminiscent of the asymmetric recoilless Carbine 920 railgun from the Halo franchise, with the Ammonomicon entry referencing the Mac cannon from the Halo games as well. The tagline Danger High Voltage may be a reference to the Electric Six song, and the Synergy production model is likely a reference to Destiny, with the sleeper simulated in Destiny 1 functioning very similarly and having a perk that also allows for 5 ricochets. The name and appearance of the Deckard are both references to Deckard from the Blade Runner series, which is also the name of one of its synergies. The tagline Unicorn of Handguns may be in reference to the unicorn imagery that appears in a few places around the various versions of the Blade Runner films. The Ammonomicon mentions robots that fled the hegemony of man that were then hunted down by special forces. This matches the plot of the Blade Runner series. The name and tagline of the Judge are a reference to Judge Dredd's gun, the Lawgiver, with Hot Shot being one of the settings on that gun. The Morning Star's appearance and effect are all based on the Hammer of Dawn from Gears of War, which is also referenced by the synergy Chest High is the Best High, referencing the Chest High cover that is featured in those games. This also may be a reference to the Euclid C Finder from Fallout New Vegas. The alien sidearms name and appearance are taken from the plasma pistols of the Halo series. This is also where the tagline Shield Breaker and the synergy name Chief Master come from, with a fully charged plasma pistol shot being enough to break a player's shield in the multiplayer mode. The behavior and appearance after acquiring the Chief Master synergy resemble that of Halo's plasma rifle. The Rubenstein's monster's name is a portmanteau of Rubedyne and Frankenstein's monster from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which was cobbled together with multiple parts from corpses, similar to the origin story of the Rubenstein's monster. Gunder Fury's name, tagline, description, appearance, and level-up mechanics all stem from World of Warcraft's Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker, with the level 60 cap being a reference to the initial level cap when World of Warcraft first released. The synergy name Chance on Hit is a reference to how World of Warcraft refers to effects that may trigger when a player hits the enemy. The Mind Cutter's name and appearance reference the Plasma Cutter found in the Dead Space games, which features a similar rotating module, with the name of the Dead Place synergy also alluding to the game's name. The synergy name Minecraft is the same as Minecraft, but with a space in the middle. The Flash Ray's name, tagline, and description are all in reference to Flash Gordon, with the tagline being a reference to the Queen song Flash, and by extension the next line Savior of the Universe being one of the name of its synergies. The wind-up gun's appearance and crank handle that charges the gun are all in reference to Futurama, down to the rendition of Pop Goes the Weasel that plays while the player reloads. The hammer's name may be a reference to the hammer from the Call of Duty series, or the phrase fanning the hammer, which is a technique that is used to fire a revolver faster, with this gun being a fully automatic revolver. The Snake Maker's appearance is very similar to Rick's laser pistol from Rick and Morty, which is also where Rick turns 2 guards into snakes and then is told to stop his snake makery, which is likely where the name comes from. The Turbo Gun's tagline Repetitive Strain, the description, and the mechanic of needing to mash the reload button to power up during the reload are all references to the button mashing and specifically turbo buttons found on some controllers, which allow players to send button press signals sometimes faster than humanly possible. This gun in particular needs about 25 button presses per second to reach maximum power, which is likely only achievable with a turbo button or auto-clicking macro, coming full circle to its namesake. The Hegemony carbine has the tagline "all the same," which may be a reference to the opening of the Rifleman's Creed. "This is my rifle, there are many like it, but this one is mine." The Screecher's effect may be a reference to multiple games, with the appearance of the gun's bullets resembling the ripple laser found in the Gradius series or the address disruptor from Axiom Verge. The tagline and the name of the Laser Lotus combine to make a reference to the rank of Level 5 Laser Lotus from the show Community, which is the rank that Pierce Hawthorne achieves as a member of the Reformed Neo-Buddhism cult that makes sporadic appearances throughout the series. The Hegemony rifle's name and appearance resemble the DH-17 carbine from Star Wars, the sprite names even referring to it as the E-12, which may be a reference to the E-11 carbine issued to stormtroopers, potentially explaining the poor accuracy. The fight saber's name and ability to reflect projectiles all mirror that of the iconic lightsabers from the Star Wars franchise. The fight saber training synergy and the follower it spawns are in reference to the lightsaber training that Luke Skywalker is put through in A New Hope. The shape of this gun is reminiscent of the las guns found in the Warhammer 40k universe, which might also be the source of the tagline Heresy, beyond just the general disdain for melee combat within the Gungeon. The laser rifle's name and appearance most closely resemble the laser rifles seen in XCOM UFO Defense. The Crestfaller's name and Crestfallen Soul synergy refer to the Crestfallen Warrior from the Dark Souls series, the appearance of this gun resembling a grav gun from Warhammer 40k. The Rad Gun's tagline, "Are you a bad enough dude?" may be a reference to the intro of Bad Dudes on the NES. The appearance of this gun is a reference to the Ollie Ollie series, with the colors of the hat, shirt, color, and skateboard being present on the gun. The synergy name Kung Fu Hippie Rappin' Surfer is a reference to The Simpsons. The Thunderbolt has an appearance reminiscent of the Thunderbolt from Quake or the Plasma Gun from Doom, with the synergy name Alistair's Ladder being a reference to Jacob's Ladder, which has similar arcs of electricity connected between two vertical lines. The Charge Shot's name and Ammonomicon entry refer to the game Charge Shot, which features the aforementioned rocket-propelled deathmatches. The Dark Marker features a synergy named Antechamber, which may potentially be a reference to the game of the same name. The Particulator features a Bible-like excerpt from Genesis chapter 1 verse 1, which in the Bible would be Genesis 1:1, which features the creation of the universe by God. The Emperor's name and effect firing chained lightning is likely a reference to Emperor Palpatine from the Star Wars series. The firing mechanism and ball-like projectiles may be in reference to Emperor Zurg from Toy Story 2. The RPG having the tagline "Leveled Up" is a reference to the RPG genre of games, which is completely unrelated to the gun except in name. The grenade launcher's synergy Terminated 2 is potentially a joint reference to Terminator 2, as well as the Dangeresque 2 cosmetic from Team Fortress 2. The exotic's appearance and effect are made to emulate Destiny's Gjallarhorn, one of the most iconic exotic guns from that game. The tagline Pack of Wolves refers to the perk of the Gjallarhorn, the Wolfpack rounds. The small orbital spawned by this gun is a reference to the Ghosts from the Destiny games. The Commando's tagline, "You're fired," quotes a line delivered in the movie True Lies, and the mechanized walkers referred to in the Ammonomicon entries may be a reference to the Metal Gears in the Metal Gear Solid series. The RC rocket references the Nikita remote-controlled missile launcher in Metal Gear Solid, with the electrified corridor mentioned by the Ammonomicon being a scene from that game. The Yari launcher's name, mention of Zilla Industries, and appearance are all taken from the Yari Type 24 rocket launcher from Shadow Warrior, specifically the 2013 release. The synergy name Hail to the King is a catchphrase uttered when equipping a rocket launcher in Duke Nukem 3D, which is also in reference to Ash Williams from Army of Darkness. The Lil Bomber has a general theme of bombs and a tagline "Refuse to Lose," which is likely a reference to Bomberman, who says the line after beating stages in Bomberman Hero. The appearance and name of the King Bomber synergy are references to King Babam, who has appeared as an antagonist in multiple Mario games. The Grasshopper's name and tagline are references to the Noisy Cricket from the Men in Black franchise. The Void Core Cannon's appearance may be a reference to the plasma projector wielded by the Assault T synth from Void 1.1. The Staff of Firepower having the appearance of a staff as a golden scepter with a red jewel on the end, and the fire status it applies might be a reference to the Fire Rod from The Legend of Zelda. The Hexagon's tagline, Light Fantastic, is a reference to the Terry Pratchett book, The Light Fantastic. The ability of magic weapons to turn enemies into chickens might be a reference to the Odyssey, where Odysseus's men were cursed to turn into pigs by a sorceress. The Phoenix gun's fire effects and the tagline Reborn in Flame reference the mythological phoenix, a fiery bird that can resurrect itself from death. The synergy name Phoenix Up mirrors the name of the Phoenix Down item from the Final Fantasy series, and the gun may be a reference to Terraria's Phoenix Blaster, another Phoenix-based fire gun. The magic lamp gun and the idea of genies granting 3 wishes found in magical oil lamps is a trope that stems from Aladdin and the Wonderful Lamp, one of the stories found in the 1001 Arabian Nights. The Ammonomicon line referring to not minding death wishes is a reference to Disney's Aladdin, with the character Genie whose rules outline that he does not grant wishes to kill people. The shape of the gunslinger's ashes is reminiscent of canopic jars used to contain organs of embalmed corpses in ancient Egypt, specifically resembling one of the gods who protects canopic jars, Duamutef's head, which marked jars that contain the stomach. The idea of preserving the body with gun intact may be a reference to the mummy embalming process, or the process of storing a lich's soul in Dungeons & Dragons, which similarly to the Ammonomicon entry is a secret only known by ancient and powerful beings. The synergy name Ghost with the Most is a reference to a similar line in the movie Beetlejuice. The name of the Luxon canon is a reference to the Lightbringer series of books written by Brent Weeks, where Luxon is a magical solid form of light that is fired by projectiles. The line about falsely being considered to have healing properties is a reference to crystal healing methods that are often seen as more pure or more spiritual methods that have no real-world scientific basis. One of Gunther's quotes, "Go Team Gungeon," is possibly a reference to the catchphrase "Go Team Venture" from the Venture Brothers. Gunther's split mask face and red eyes may be a reference to the appearance of Vivek in The Elder Scrolls III Morrowind. The unicorn horn firing a stream of rainbow light and cheery chiptune music closely resembles the early 2010s meme Nyan Cat, which is also potentially a reference to Space Unicorn, a song by Perry Grip from a similar era of the internet which features a similar song and unicorn whose horn streams rainbows. In most depictions, killing a unicorn is an abhorrent act, which is possibly why this gun is cursed despite its colorful abilities. The name of the Cobalt Hammer combines the names of streamers Cobalt Streak and Richard Hammer, who streamed for several days when the game Enter the Gungeon first released in order to beat it. The concept of carrying their partner on their back may be a reference to the final level of Cave Story, or Banjo and Kazooie. The hammer design and electric theming reference Thor, the Norse god of thunder who wielded the legendary hammer Mjolnir. The Frost Giant's synergy, Jotuntime, is a reference to Jotunheim, realm of the Frost Giants in Norse mythology. The Bullet Boar's name and appearance reference the Cerebral Boar from Turok 2 Seeds of Evil. This is further referenced by the synergy name Cerebral Bros. The Cat Claw's tagline, "Needle your foes," and the projectiles refer to the Needler from the Halo games, with the pun of need in reference to the tendency of cats to push down on surfaces and flex their claws in a manner that resembles kneading dough. The name of this weapon may be a reference to the dirk of the same name wielded by the Grey Mouser in Fritz Leiber's books, which is further referenced by being given by Freifel and the Grey Mouser, who are also nods to that series. The gun's physical appearance may have been inspired by the Dragon Claw seen in the game Heretic. The Mega Hand's appearance is an homage to the Mega Buster, the primary weapon of Mega Man in his eponymous series, with the tagline "-P- referring to the default weapon represented with a P in the first few games. All of the synergy weapons featured in Gungeon are from the Robot Masters featured in Mega Man 2. Get Equipped with A refers to the air shooter from Airman. Get Equipped with B, the bubble lead from Bubble Man. C is the Crash Bomber from Crash Man. F is the Time Stopper from Flash Man. H is the Atomic Fire for Heat Man. M is the Metal Blade from Metal Man. Q is the Quick Boomerang from Quick Man. And W is the Leaf Shield from Wood Man. The Demon Head is a reference to the Guardian Head item in Shadow Warrior, which fires in a similar fashion and orbits the player, which the Demon Head does in most of its synergies. The Heroine gun is modeled after Samus Aran's power suit cannon in Metroid Prime, which serves as her primary weapon throughout the series. The Wave Beam, Plasma Beam, and Ice Beam synergies are also references to the alternate firing modes that it can use. The Hyper Beam synergy is a reference to the baby Metroid sacrifice at the end of Super Metroid, which unlocks an ultra-powerful Rainbow Beam after stealing Mother Brain's power and transferring it to Samus. The synergy name Why Can't You Crawl is a reference to an infamous Miiverse post, where a poster asked why can't Metroid crawl. The appearance of the mutation gun's beam resembles the Ouroboros infection featured in Resident Evil 5. The synergy name Neo Tekyo may be a reference to Tetsuo from the manga series Akira, who also undergoes intense mutations. The synergy's name is likely a play on the name Neo Tokyo, which is the setting for Akira. The Flame Hand's tagline 2d6 plus int mod is a reference to Dungeons & Dragons, specifically the notation for damage calculation of spells. In this case, the Flame Hand spell does damage equal to 2 6-sided dice rolls plus the caster's intelligence modifier, which actually varies depending on which Gungeoneer you're playing. The synergy Maximize Spell is a reference to an effect that can be applied to spells in Dungeons & Dragons, which maximizes the variable effects of a spell. The green appearance of the gun with this synergy may be a reference to Acquisitions Incorporated, which is a long-running live-play D&D adventure. The character who invented this gun in the Ammonomicon entry, Albin Smallbore, may be a play on the name of Albus Dumbledore from the Harry Potter series. The Sunlight Javelin's effects are made to emulate the effect of the Sunlight Javelin Miracle from the Dark Souls series. The tagline Brilliant Aura and the phrase Grossly Incandescent in the Ammonomicon are quotes from Dark Souls' Solaire. The synergy name \O/ is text meant to resemble a person raising their arms above the head at an outward angle, the pose used to praise the sun in Dark Souls. The Rocket Fist weapon and its synergy, that Pizza, are a reference to the weapon in Final Fantasy VII and a quote from its wielder, Barret. The robot's left hand's tagline, See You Later, is a reference to the Terminator's iconic Hasta la Vista from the original Terminator film. The appearance and projectiles of the Super Meat Gun are made to emulate Super Meat Boy, a platformer by Edmund McMillan, with the gun resembling the titular Meat Boy and the buzzsaws being a prominent trap in that game. The tagline Very Fast is a reference to Meat Boy's description in the character selection of Very Fast, Made of Meat. The Anvil's idea of using falling anvils to dispatch enemies is a staple of the Looney Tunes series, particularly Wile E. Coyote, with the tagline and Ammonomicon entry lampshading the dangerous nature that a real-life attempt would imply, with cartoon violence often being relatively safe in comparison. The fossilized gun's appearance as a T-Rex skull may be a reference to Jurassic Park, with the Ballistic era mentioned in the Ammonomicon as a play of the word ballistic combined with the naming conventions of ancient time periods such as the Jurassic or Triassic period. The Gamma Ray has the tagline Mean Green, which is a reference to Marvel's The Incredible Hulk, who has a strong connection with gamma radiation in his origin story. The appearance of the gun resembles the AEP-7 laser pistols found in Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, the latter of which had a variant that fired green lasers. The Beta Ray synergy of this gun furthers the resemblance, with the appearance matching the AER-9 rifles found in those games. The Freeze Ray's tagline, Ice to Meet You, is a line from Batman and Robin's Mr. Freeze, who use multiple ice and snow puns while wielding a similar weapon. The synergy name Willing to Sacrifice is a reference to Foreigner's 1977 song Cold as Ice. The design and beam of the disintegrator weapon largely resemble the Rhino brand guns found in the Ratchet & Clank games, with the laser most closely resembling the fourth installments and the design matching the fifth. The Proton backpack mimics the primary tool of the Ghostbusters, with the tagline referring to a pivotal warning to never cross the weapon's streams, which is later used at the climax to take down the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. The Electron Pack synergy changes the appearance to resemble the Wunderwaffe DG2 from the Call of Duty games, or the blood launcher found in Nuclear Throne. The Mega Dowser's name and appearance are an homage to the Super Soaker, a line of toy water guns, with this particular one most closely resembling the Super Soaker 50, one of the first designs. The synergy name Hydro Pump is likely a reference to the Pokemon move, which fires a massive jet of water to attack. The Plunger refers to a group in the Ammonomicon, Médecins Sans Diplôme, which translates as Doctors Without Diplomas, a reference to the real-life organization Doctors Without Borders. The Raiden Coil's name and appearance are a reference to the Raiden series of games, with the tagline Shoot 'em up being the genre of that series. The beam of this weapon most closely resembles the Bend Plasma, which was first seen in Raiden 2. The Moonscraper's appearance and name are derived from the Moonraker laser seen in the titular James Bond movie, which also made an appearance in GoldenEye 007. The Ammonomicon entry mentioning using it to carve moonrock may be a reference to the Flash game Canary, which features a similar weapon used to cut through an asteroid. The entire concept of the barrel comes from the phrase, like shooting fish in a barrel, to describe something that is as easy as it can get, taken literally and made into a barrel that shoots fish. The synergy name One Fish, Two Fish is a reference to the Dr. Seuss book One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish, hence why the synergy fires red and blue fish. The appearance of the fish with orange lips and vertical top fin in the like shooting fish synergy may be a nod to the character Fish from Nuclear Throne. The Trick Gun's name, ability to transform, and mention of demon hunters in the Ammonomicon entry make this gun a clear reference to Bloodborne's trick weapons, which feature a similar transforming effect, with the pistol and blunderbuss forms being the two main firearms available in that game. The synergy name Fear the Old Blood refers to the blood of the Great Ones found in Bloodborne, which is also called the Old Blood. The mailbox's concept of a package full of glitter comes from the practice of glitter bombing, a prank where someone is mailed an envelope or package of glitter, which is notoriously messy and difficult to clean, hence the achievement named Day Ruiner for killing a boss covered in glitter. The synergy name Flat Stanley shares a name with a book. The nail gun's tagline Pest Control is a reference to the 1990s film Arachnophobia, with the Ammonomicon mentioning a ritual with spiders and fire being a reference to the climactic scene of the film, where a nail gun is used to impale and subsequently incinerate the main antagonist spider called the General. The idea of using a nail gun as a primary weapon may be a reference to the SNES title Home Improvement Power Tool Pursuit, in which Tim Taylor uses a nail gun that is similarly weak and inaccurate. The light gun's white beams, appearance, and ducks all harken back to the NES Zapper accessory in the NES game Duck Hunt. The synergy name Peripheral Vision is a play on the word peripheral being used to refer to an extra console attachment like the Zapper, and the dogs spawned by the synergy are a reference to the dog who also appears in Duck Hunt. The dueling laser is a reference to George R.R. Martin's Dying of the Light and its dueling laser pistol. The Woodbeam's tagline, Speak Softly, is a portion of a quote from the American President Teddy Roosevelt, Speak softly and carry a big stick. The idea of a wood beam as a weapon is an internet joke/hoax that was rumored to be a weapon in Super Metroid, playing off the dual meaning of the word beam. The fact that you unlock this gun from trading with the vampire is likely a reference to the weakness of vampires of having a stake driven through their heart. The Scrambler's tagline, Bullet or the Gun, refers to the phrase chicken or the egg, referring to a cycle that needs both elements for the other to exist, making it confusing which one came first. This is also used for the name of the synergy, Bullet or the Egg. The trash cannon's synergy name Grouch is a reference to Oscar the Grouch from Sesame Street, who lives in a garbage can. The idea of a gun that fires trash may be a reference to the junk jet found in Fallout 4. The Origuni's name is a portmanteau of gun and origami, a Japanese art of folding paper to resemble other objects. The synergy Thousand Cuts is likely a reference to a form of torture that also originates from the same area. The kiln's idea of using clay pots to deal damage is a recurring mechanic in the Legend of Zelda series, with kiln being an anagram of the main protagonist Link, and the crystal shards that pop out being a reference to rupees, the main currency of the Zelda games that can be found by breaking pots. The synergy name Don't Worry About the Vase is a reference to a line from the Oracle in The Matrix. The appearance of the Skull Spitter gun may be a reference to the 2011 game Shadows of the Damned and its talking skeleton gun Johnson. The Ammonomicon credits this and other necromantic guns to Nguyen the Cursed, which is a reference to the Jake Clover game Nguyen Spectre. The name of the buzzkill tends to refer to someone who prevents others from having fun, which is referenced by the gun's designer overruling the pun name of his team because it's technically a handgun. The synergy name I Studied the Blade is a reference to an infamously cringeworthy power fantasy posted online, where someone claims that they studied the blade while others did things that they deemed less worthy of their time, and now feel superior when the barbarians are at the gate. The idea of a pistol that fires buzzsaws may be a reference to the Ratchet & Clank series, which featured the Buzzblades weapon. The Tearjerker's idea of using tears to fight through a dungeon and the heavy influence of the player's movement on the fire direction are directly taken from The Binding of Isaac, a pioneer of the roguelike genre. The appearance of the Wrath of the Blam synergy is nearly identical to the face of Isaac in those games, and the synergy named Wrath of the Blam is a pun on The Binding of Isaac's first DLC, Wrath of the Lamb. The tagline Q_Q is text meant to resemble a crying face. The name and ability of the Star Pew to charge a watering can are direct references to the indie farming game Stardew Valley. The Eye of the Beholster gun is likely spawned from a pun on the phrase, "Beauty is in the eye of the beholder," with the beholder being the D&D monster that the Beholster was based on. This is further compounded with the name of the juvenile beholsters being called beaties, which would lead to the phrase being, "Beady is in the eye of the beholster." The glass cannon weapon is a reference to a literal glass cannon, something that is very effective but very fragile. The synergy name Max Payne is a play on the name of the game series. The shock rifle is a pun on the shock rifles found from the Halo games, with the appearance of a dark gray battery with a bronze-colored end being very reminiscent of the Duracell brand of batteries. The bait launcher has the idea of using stakes to lure tigers to the enemy, which could be a reference to Far Cry 4, where the player can lure wild predators to locations by throwing baits, which would often maul anything they found. The Brick Breaker's brown brick blocks, green turtle shells, and Ammonomicon referring to the person who could turn bricks into coins and turtles and mushrooms are all a reference to Mario. The name Brick Breaker may be a reference to Breakout, which is also sometimes called Brick Breaker. The synergy name Block Party is likely a reference to the Mario Party spin-off series. The lowercase r's idea of a single ASCII character representing an entire object stems from very old text-based adventure games, notably the original Rogue, which is where the term roguelike comes from. The rapid synergy has the chance to spell out the word Taffer when fired, which may be a reference to Thief the Dark Project, where guards will use the made-up slang word as an insult. The replete synergy has a chance to spell out Booyakasha, which is potentially a reference to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2012 animated show, where the Japanese version had an ending theme of the same name. The Excalibur gun's name and Ammonomicon reference to a legendary hero referring to King Arthur, who wielded a sword of the same name given to him by the Lady of the Lake. The tagline Once in Future is a reference to The Once in Future King by T.H. White, which is also predominantly about King Arthur. The concept of guns that are also swords is a recurring motif in anime and RPG games, which may be where the synergy name Buster Gun is a reference to, with the Buster Sword being Cloudstrife's iconic weapon from the Final Fantasy series. The synergy name Snickersnack is a reference to Lewis Carroll's poem Jabberwocky, Snickersnack being a nonsense word that refers to the sound of a very sharp sword cutting through something. The Face Melter gun's appearance seems to be a reference to the game Brutal Legend, which also features a move called the Face Melter. The tagline Squidly Squidly Wii is likely a reference to Borderlands 2 with Mr. Torg, who often does air guitar solos accompanied by similar noises. The Ammonomicon description for the really special loot refers to Blue Fire. This is a reference to Patrick Rothfuss's King Killer Chronicle series, in which the protagonist Kvoth is a lutenist searching for a way to defeat the Chandrian, who make fire turn blue when nearby. The effect of playing a lute to increase companions' efficacy is likely a reference to the Bard class of character in Dungeons & Dragons. The Trident's tagline Under the Sea is a reference to a song of the same name from The Little Mermaid, in which King Triton wields a trident that allows control of the ocean. The synergy name Poseidon is a reference to Poseidon, the Greek god of the sea who is commonly depicted using a trident. The Krollerglave's tagline Studied the Blade, and the Ammonomicon's mention of it being bought from a mall kiosk reference mall ninjas, people who attempt to style themselves after ninjas and masters of bladed weapons. The name and appearance are taken from the science fiction film Kroll. The Abyssal Tentacle's purple body and green suction cup color scheme are almost exactly the same as the main antagonist in the point-and-click adventure game Day of the Tentacle. The effect of this gun is very similar to the Bloodborne hunter's tool Augur of Abretus that extends a tentacle to attack enemies. The name may be a reference to RuneScape as well, which features a whip-like weapon of the same name. The synergy name Decoy Octorok is a combination of Metal Gear Solid character Decoy Octopus and the Octorok, an enemy from the Legend of Zelda series. This is also the online handle of developer Dave Crooks. The synergy name Cosmic Horror is a reference to the cosmic horror genre, which was largely spawned by the works of H.P. Lovecraft, with tentacles being a prevalent feature. The quad laser's appearance and effect are lifted directly from the show Aqua Teen Hunger Force, with the tagline "No one can defeat it" being a line from the show. Similarly, the name of the synergy Jumping is Useless is also a line from the show. The Tetraminator is a direct reference to Tetris, one of the best-selling video games of all time. The gun itself is also made up of one of each of the 7 blocks called tetraminos, which is also where the gun's name comes from. The tagline, "Line Piece," is a reference to the college humor sketch, The Tetris God. The Evolver's tagline, "Tamagunchi," is likely a play on the Tamagotchi, a popular series of virtual pets. The Synergy Powerhouse of the Cell is a reference to mitochondria as the powerhouse of the cell, which has become a meme based on biology lessons in the United States school curriculum. The Gungeon ant's idea of being an ant that is also a gun may come from the real-life bullet ant, which has an extremely painful sting that has been likened to being shot. The life orb's name and appearance are very similar to the held item from the Pokemon series, with the tagline, "Your soul is mine," being a quote from Mortal Kombat's Shang Tsung. The Alien Engine's tagline, "Danger Zone," may be a reference to the Kenny Loggins song of the same name, featured in the film Top Gun. The Synergy name Ancient Aliens is likely a reference to the reality TV show that shares a name that theorizes about alien technology and extraterrestrial life. The Synergy name Pilot Wingsman is likely a reference to Nintendo's Pilot Wings games. The microtransaction gun's name and tagline, "Pay to Win," and the ability to unlock this gun by paying 99 cents of real-life money instead of 100 hegemony credits, are all in reference to microtransactions, which often appear in-game as a way to get around tedious tasks or long wait times by paying real money. The green crystals fired by this weapon are often of premium currency, most infamously seen in EA's Dungeon Keeper and Clash of Clans, 2 games with extremely high usage of microtransactions. The mechanic of the microtransaction having a different shot effect each time may be a reference to loot boxes, which are a common form of microtransaction where the in-game reward is randomized within a pool, which further incentivizes spending to get rare items. The Synergy name http://merch.devolverdigital.com is just a link to Devolver Digital's real online merchandise store. The tagline "Lousy T-shirt of the Pox Cannon" is a paraphrasing of a common phrase found on merchandise that often reads, "I did X and all I got was this lousy t-shirt." The name and idea of a poisonous t-shirt cannon is likely a reference to Pax Pox, the concept of getting sick immediately after attending conventions, which is not a concept that has aged well in recent years. The t-shirt cannon being used as an actual weapon in the Gungeon may refer to the death of Maud Flanders in The Simpsons, who died after being hit by a t-shirt and falling over a stadium railing. The banana being a throwable weapon that splits into multiple explosive bananas is a staple of the Worms series and the Banana Bomb weapon. The silencer's name is likely a pun on silencer attachments, which can be attached to guns to quiet the sound of the gunshot. The tagline's likely a reference to the line,
200 thread count, 200 dead count,
from American Dad. The directional pad, or D-pad, is a common control interface for video games that was invented by legendary designer Gunpei Yokoi, and was first used on the Game & Watch version of Donkey Kong. The mechanic of sequences of inputs having extra attacks is a staple of many fighting games, with the downright fireball effect being a direct reference to Street Fighter's Ryu, and the left-left grappling hook being a reference to Mortal Kombat's Scorpion. When reloading this gun, the animation shows the character inputting up, down, left, right, a portion of the famous Konami code Easter egg found initially in Konami games that is spread to appear in tons of media. The Ammonamicon's mention of wizards may be a reference to the 1989 film The Wizard, which features a kid who is naturally talented at video games. The third-party controller's name and Mad Catz Synergy reference the third-party controller brand Mad Catz that often produced poorer quality controllers for many video game consoles, which is also why one of the joysticks is mentioned as being extremely wiggly, a common defect on Mad Catz controllers. The tagline, "Assuming direct control," is a reference to the Harbinger from Mass Effect 2, who uses this line before gaining control over its enemies. The Gungeon's name and appearance are based on the Gungeon, an iconic ancient zither instrument from China. The tagline "Hustle" and its ability to scatter arrows are likely a reference to the Kung Fu Hustle movie. The sling's damage increase when used against bosses is likely a reference to the biblical story of David and Goliath, in which David used a sling to defeat a much larger opponent. The tagline "Outrageous" and the synergy name "Slings and Arrows" are both references to the iconic "to be or not to be" soliloquy found in Shakespeare's Hamlet when describing the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. The cactus's tagline 1000 needles and the ammo capacity of 1000 are both in reference to Cactuar from the Final Fantasy games, with the line in the Ammonomicon about an undiscovered chamber of the Gungeon potentially referencing the unused Old West desert tile set. The Black Hole Gun's name and tagline of "Won't You Come" form a reference to the 1994 song "Black Hole Sun" by Soundgarden. The BSG's name and effect play off of the BFG 9000, which appears in multiple games in the Doom franchise, with the tagline "Big Shooty Gun" referencing the BFG's name as the Big Gun. The compressed air tank being a weapon that shoots sharks is a reference to the 1975 movie Jaws, with the synergy "Smile, you son of a" combining to reference the end of the movie where the same line is used before Martin Brody shoots a compressed air tank, which explodes and kills the shark. The Serious Cannon's name and synergy with the Devolver make it a clear reference to Serious Sam, another game series published by Devolver Digital. The muscular men with bombs that run screaming out of the cannon with the Serious Sam publishing contract synergy are a reference to Serious Sam Kamikaze Attack. The makeshift cannon's appearance and singular shot are both references to the Star Trek episode Arena, which features Captain Kirk making a similar weapon. The tagline "You only get one shot" may be a reference to the lyrics of Lose Yourself by Eminem. The Devolver's name is a reference to Enter the Gungeon's publisher, Devolver Digital, many of its synergies being references to other Devolver games. The tagline "Degenerates" might be a homonym in that it degenerates your enemies, but may also be a jab at Devolver themselves by calling them degenerates. The finished gun being added in the final update for Enter the Gungeon and replacing the unfinished gun when the player completes the Ammonomicon is a clear meta reference to the state of Gungeon as a game, with the hourglass embossed in the unfinished gun having fully run its course and the developers having finished their work on the game. The tagline "Thanks for playing" is a direct message to Gungeon's player base. The line "A gun to rule them all" is likely a play on the phrase "one ring to rule them all" from The Lord of the Rings. In addition to the absolutely staggering arsenal of guns, this game also has plenty of passive and active items that are also references. The ration's ability to automatically heal a player and the tagline "Calories, mate" are a reference to the Calorie Mate, the rations found in the Metal Gear series. The orange's bizarrely 3D modeled appearances while on the ground, as well as the tagline "You're not Alexander" and the ability to heal the player are all references to the PS2 game God Hand. The appearance of the bottle item and its ability to store useful items for later is taken from various entries in the Legend of Zelda franchise. The ability to store fairies and use them to heal to full is a recurring mechanic in multiple Zelda games, and the tagline "Heart Container" references the pickup of the same name. The ability of the bomb item to open secret rooms is a staple of many dungeon crawler games, which prominently features in the Legend of Zelda series and the Binding of Isaac series. The chaff grenade's tagline "Dazed and Confused" may be a reference to the movie or the song by Led Zeppelin. The effects of the chaff grenade are very reminiscent of the same chaff grenades found in Metal Gear Solid. The proximity mine's appearance is likely meant to emulate that of the item of the same name in GoldenEye 007. The appearance and name of the weird egg item is a direct reference to an item that pops up multiple times throughout the Zelda series. The Napalm Strike's tagline, "Smells Great," may be a reference to Apocalypse Now, which features the line, "I love the smell of napalm in the morning." The big boy with the tagline, "Set the World on Fire," is a reference to the song "I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire" by the Ink Spots, which has appeared in multiple Fallout games. The Fallout reference may be continued by the ability to turn Bulletkin into poison-resistant mutant Bulletkin. This potentially references the radiation-immune ghouls of the Fallout games. The name Big Boy is a play on the Little Boy, one of the two nuclear bombs detonated by the United States and Japan during World War II. The name is also used by a Fat Man mini-nuke launcher in Fallout 4. The appearance of this item being a red telephone is likely a reference to the Moscow-Washington hotline, a direct line of communication between the United States and Russia made in the 1960s. This hotline was referred to as the Red Telephone despite never really being a telephone line. The appearance and effect of the roll bomb mimics that of the pickups from the Metroid series. The iBomb companion app and tagline "One for That" directly reference the Apple iPhone, which allegedly has an app for everything. The synergy name AI Assistant may be a reference to AI assistants that are now packaged into almost all smart technology, such as Siri and Cortana. The name and appearance of the Master of Unlocking item are a reference to Jill Valentine of the Resident Evil series, with the name being from an infamous quote in the first game. "Jill, here's a lockpick. It might come in handy if you, the Master of Unlocking, take it with you." The utility belt item shows up in multiple comic books, with Batman's yellow tool belt likely being the specific one referenced. The synergy Gunnerang may be a reference to the Batarangs, and by extension his aversion to guns, or a reference to the Gunnerang from Borderlands. The name and appearance of the Macho Brace and the tagline "Value for Effort" are clear references to the Pokemon held item of the same name, which is used to increase a Pokemon's effort values, with the Ammonomicon entries mention that it doesn't decrease speed, mirroring the Pokemon item which cuts a Pokemon's speed in half. The Loot Bag, Clown Mask, and Drill are all references to Payday 2, which had a promotion with Gungeon where items from Payday appeared in the Gungeon, and items from Gungeon appeared in Payday 2. The Clown Mask item represents that of Dallas, the main character, along with the 3 familiars spawned having the appearance of Wolf, Chains, and Hoxton. The Loot Bag's tagline "Doesn't Float" is a reference to a unique method of failing a mission in Payday 2 by throwing the loot bag into water. The Drill's Sergeant tagline is a reference to a perk in Payday 2, the Drill Sergeant. The Scouter item is a reference to Scouters, devices in the Dragon Ball Z anime that show an opponent's power level. The inscribed name Ritvik in the Ammonomicon is that of one of the testers, Ritvik Banzal. The bullet time item and effect come from The Matrix, which featured scenes where time slows during gunfights, which inspired the bullet time mechanic in Max Payne. The tagline, "Dodge this," is a quote from The Matrix's Trinity. The aged bell that can stop time when rung may be a reference to the Aborson series by Garth Nix in the form of the bell Saraneth. It may also be a reference to the unheard bell from Made in Abyss. The Singularity is a portable black hole device designed for military personnel, which may be a reference to Call of Duty's Gersh device from the Zombies mode, which has a similar design and function. The Hellhole synergy may be a reference to the movie Event Horizon, the plot of which features a portal to hell made by a device that creates black holes. The Decoy is a reference to the Naruto series' body replacement technique, which allows the user to swap places with a log in order to avoid attacks, hence the sprite of this item. The synergies being Kage Bunshin and Kinjutsu are further Naruto references to the Shadow Clone technique and the Forbidden techniques, of which the Shadow Clone is one. The Shadow Clone technique having "Believe It" in its Ammonomicon entry is Naruto's catchphrase in the early English dubs, and the tagline "No Jutsu" is often appended to the name of techniques in the Naruto series. The Melted Rock's name and effect are directly taken from Melting, one of the playable characters in Nuclear Throne, who can also cause corpses to explode. The trusty lockpick being a thin piece of metal such as a bobby pin or a paper clip is a widely used trope in a wide array of media. The Smoke Bob's tagline "Vanish" may be a reference to the line "Ninja Vanish" from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 video game. The effect and tagline of the box item are all a reference to the Metal Gear Solid's iconic box disguise, which if noticed by NPCs will be remarked on as just a box. The Fortune's Favor item is a reference to the Metal Gear Solid 2 character Fortune, who had a similar device that could curve bullets around her. The tagline of the Jar of Bees item is a reference to The Pain, a character from Metal Gear Solid 3 who could control bees. The Potion of Lead Skin's name and effect reference the Potion of Stone Skin from Dungeons & Dragons. The tagline "I'm Invincible" is potentially a reference to the James Bond movie GoldenEye, or Metal Gear Rising's Sundowner, who boasts about their invincibility while using a shield. The name and effect of the Double Vision item are a reference to the 1993 film Tombstone, in which a drunk and disgruntled Doc Holliday uses 2 guns after being told he's too drunk to fight with the line, "I've got 2 guns, one for each of you." The synergy name Dwarven Stout may be a reference to RuneScape, which features a drink of the same name. The synergy 5 o'clock somewhere might be a reference to the Jimmy Buffett song. The chest teleporter having the ability to skip chests and have the loot inside increase in quality is potentially a reference to a similar mechanic in the sealed chests from the Chrono Trigger series. The synergy name Telefrag is a reference to a feature of multiple games that feature teleportation, such as Spelunky, in which teleporting into something will often cause it to explode. The poison vial having "for external use only" on its tagline is likely a reference to the same phrase that appears on a lot of cleaning products that may be harmful if consumed. The portable turret having a cylindrical design and a central red eye, as well as the tendency to shoot at anything that moves, is a reference to the turrets from the Portal series. The ability of the grappling hook being able to stun enemies and latch onto surfaces is taken from the Zelda series' Hookshot, which is played upon by the name Shoot Hook in the Ammonomicon entry. The stuffed star having the appearance of a 5-pointed star with 2 eyes that grants rainbow-colored invincibility is all lifted directly from the star power-up in the Mario games. The slightly rounder shape of the star also resembles the Luma from the Mario Galaxy games. The boomerang's ability to lock onto multiple enemies and stun them is a staple of the Zelda series. The shield of the maiden with the phrase, "Shields are nice, but not if they engender passivity," is a reference to the description of the wooden shield from Bloodborne. The appearance of this particular shield is reminiscent of that carried by the shield maiden in the indie game Eider, hence the name. The name and effect of the Synergy Mirror Shield are likely a reference to the item of the same name that features in multiple Zelda titles. The Crisis Stone's name and being unlocked by Tonic the Sledge Dog are likely a reference to the Chaos Emeralds from the Sonic the Hedgehog series. The voice line, "Reload," that plays when the player runs out of bullets is a reference to Time Crisis, also referenced by the name of this item, which only allows the player to reload in cover which the item creates. The portable table device is reminiscent of multiple brands of foldable plastic tables that are often used to create more table space at gatherings. The tagline, "Know when to fold 'em," is likely a reference to the Kenny Rogers song The Gambler. The Dharma item is based on Japanese Dharma dolls, which are small painted dolls modeled after the Bodhidharma, the founder of Zen Buddhism. In real life, a Dharma has one eye painted with ink, and the owner makes a wish or sets a goal, painting in the other eye if the wish or goal is realized. The shape of the partially eaten cheese and the effect of being able to eat enemies are clear references to Pac-Man, who could eat ghosts by consuming a power pellet. The tagline, "Aged almost 40 years," calls back to the release date of Pac-Man, 1980. The +1 bullets item is likely a reference to the naming convention of magic items found in Dungeons & Dragons, where a +X weapon increases the roll to hit and damage dealt by X, hence the description saying it is exactly 1 better. The description Masterwork bullets may also be a reference to D&D's Masterwork items, which was an old system of +X items. The inventor of the shock rounds and other electricity-based items in the Gungeon is Alistair the Thunderbolt, which is potentially a nod to Alastor, a boss in Beautiful Joe and a weapon in Devil May Cry, which both have control over lightning. The Devolver round's name and appearance are all references to Devolver Digital, with the D stylized after the Devolver Digital logo. The Ammonomicon entry is a reference to the publishing contract between Devolver and Dodgeroll Games. The Vorpal Bullet's name and tagline are all references to Jabberwocky by Lewis Carroll, with the line 1, 2, and through, the Vorpal blade went snicker snack. He left it dead, and with its head, he went galumphing back. The Katana Bullet's name and capitalization of 0 in the Ammonomicon entry are a reference to Katana Zero, another game published by Devolver Digital. The tagline "Folded Lead" is a reference to the folded steel that is used to make katana blades. The Hungry Bullets' name and use of a hippopotamus head are a reference to the Hungry Hungry Hippos game, which is also referenced by the tagline Hungry Hungry. The Heavy Bullets are a reference to the game of the same name, with the synergy Overdose being a reference to Dose 1, the composer of Gungeon's soundtrack and the soundtrack for Heavy Bullets. The Alpha Bullet's synergy name, J-Am, is potentially a reference to the Bible's Revelations chapter 22, verse 13, which reads, "I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and last, the beginning and the end." The synergy name with irradiated lead, Emerald Weapon, is a reference to Final Fantasy VII, which has a super boss of the same name. The Frost Bullet's synergy name, Cold Ones, may be a play on the YouTube series, Hot Ones. The Magic Bullet's tagline, "Sufficiently Advanced," is a portion of the phrase, "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic," which was formulated by Arthur C. Clarke as one of the 3 Clarke's Laws. The synergy name Chicken Arise is a reference to a line spoken in the Aqua Teen's Hunger Force episode, Video Ouija. The item Fat Bullets and the idea that larger shots are stronger shows up in the Binding of Isaac series, which often scales the size of Isaac's tears as damage increases. The game Metal Slug also features a similar damage and projectile size increase if the player eats too much food. The Shadow Bullet's tagline referring to a double tap is a practice of shooting someone twice to make sure the damage is fatal. The Ammonomicon's mention of Umbral Bullets may be a reference to Bayonetta. The Silver Bullets are a reference to many folklore monsters who are averse to silver being slain by silver bullets, which is reflected in its increased damage to the jammed. The synergy with Trick Gun is a reference to Bloodborne, where the player uses quicksilver bullets with their trick weapon. The Platinum Bullets having the tagline "Over 1 million served" may be a reference to McDonald's slogan "Over 99 billion served," and also is a play on Going Platinum, where a piece of media sells over 1 million sales. The tagline for the Chaos Bullets, "Taste the Painbow," is a modified version of the tagline of the Skittles candy, "Taste the Rainbow." The sprite for this item is a reference to the Smashing Pumpkins song, "Bullet with Butterfly Wings." The Cursed Bullet's tagline, "Too Spooky," may be a reference to the Too Spooky meme associated with creepypasta stories that were prevalent in the early 2010s. The Chance Bullets using a red D20 is likely a reference to Dungeons & Dragons and more generically tabletop RPGs, which use 20-sided dice to determine most random outcomes. The tagline "Good RNG" refers to random number generators in games, which drive luck-based events. The Helix bullets being made of faded brown stone and having an ammonite fossil at the top are directly paralleling the Helix fossil from the Pokemon series, which was catapulted to internet notoriety with the livestream Twitch Plays Pokemon. The tagline "Praise Be" is a reference to the phrase "Praise Helix," which was used throughout the stream as a form of reverence. The name of the Bloody 9mm item is a reference to Logan Ninefingers from the first Law book series, written by Joe Abercrombie, who is also known as the Bloody Nine. The Bionic Legs tagline, "More Machine Than Man," is a reference to a line from Obi-Wan Kenobi in Return of the Jedi, who describes Darth Vader as being more machine now than man. The synergy name "Brave New World" may be a reference to the Aldous Huxley dystopic novel of the same name. The Shotgun Coffee's speed increase and the Ammonamicon's warning to not drink more than 99 is a reference to the Futurama episode 300 Big Boys, in which Fry drinks 100 cups of coffee and gains superhuman speed. The item name of Shotga Cola and the Ammonamicon's advice to save the cap is a reference to Fallout series' Nuka-Cola, the bottle caps of which form the primary currency in the Wasteland. The name may also be a play on the German caffeinated chocolate, Chotakana, with the speed up being a reference to its use as a combat stimulant. The ballistic boots having the tagline "Speedier than a bullet" may be a reference to Superman, who has been described as faster than a speeding bullet. The Magic Sweet's appearance, effect, and tagline "Free Stats" are a reference to the rare candy item from the Pokemon series, which instantly levels up a Pokemon by 1, which usually increases their stats. The synergy name "Sweetness and Light" is a reference to the anime and manga series Sweetness and Lightning. The Litchy Triggerfinger's name is a play on the phrase "Itchy Triggerfinger," which refers to people who are too eager to shoot their weapon. The synergy name "Liches Get Stitches" is a reference to the phrase "Snitches Get Stitches." The mention of a phylactery is most likely a Dungeons & Dragons reference, where liches store their soul in an object that allows them to return from death. This may also be a reference to Terran Wanderer, which features a wizard who similarly stores their soul in a finger. The Lich's Eye Bullet's idea of prosthetic eyes that grant immense power may be a reference to Urza from Magic the Gathering, who used Power Stones as prosthetic eyes which served as the source of his power. The Enraging Photo item has "Don't Believe His Lies" written on it, which is a reference to the film Memento, which also features a Polaroid photo with the same caption. The ballad item being present in the Gungeon is likely a reference to the Abraham Lincoln quote, "The ballad is stronger than the bullet." The eye patch item having runes inscribed into it may be a reference to Odin from Norse mythology, who also wore an eye patch and often made trades and sacrifices to gain knowledge. The military training item's tagline, "Hold Facing Enemy," may be a reference to the text that is printed on claymore mines in real life, which reads "Front Towards Enemy," and may also be a reference to 2014's Edge of Tomorrow. The Cartographer's Ring mentioning an ever-changing dungeon with shifting walls is a staple of the roguelike genre, with the shifting walls concept potentially being a reference to the Spelunky series, which starts its runs with the phrase "The walls are shifting." The Amulet of the Pit Lord may be a reference to the Lord of the Pit from Magic the Gathering, which was released among its first few sets. The unlock method of knocking enemies into the pits may be a reference to how the card forces the player to feed the Lord of the Pit by sacrificing creatures. The Ring of Fire Resistance is a very generic item in most fantasy RPGs, with the shape of a gold color ring with the ruby set in the top, reminiscent of the magic item of the same names from Dungeons & Dragons. The Ring of Miserly Protection being a ring that breaks when removed, and the name of this item may come from the Ring of Fortune and Protection, which breaks when removed in Dark Souls. The appearance of a pig on top may reference piggy banks, which are used for saving money and sometimes shattered when the money is needed for a purchase. The appearance and tagline of the ring Unity are a direct reference to Captain Planet, in which the titular character is summoned by combining the power of 5 rings, which is also the source for the synergy name Captain Planted. The synergy name Garbage Collection is a process in software that frees up memory when no longer needed, with the freeze effect referencing the consequences of not doing so and potentially freezing the application or device. The name of the Chloranthy Ring item is a reference to the item of the same name in Dark Souls, which increases stamina recovery, which is closely tied to your dodge rolling. It may also be a reference to the Darkwood Grain Ring, which has a more similar effect to what happens in Gungeon. The Gungeometer strain item is likely a reference to the Andromeda strain by Michael Crichton, with the item's sprite resembling a bacteriophage. The broccoli item's Ammonomicon entry is basically identical to the opening sentence for the Wikipedia article for broccoli. The crutch item refers to a gaming term where a crutch is something that is too heavily relied on, to the point that if it were removed a player wouldn't be able to play well at all, with the "you need it" tagline essentially being an insult to the player's skill. The color, addictive nature, and origin in the far reaches of the galaxy make the spice item a reference to the spice melange from the Dune universe, which has fatal withdrawal symptoms and drives the plot of that series. The item Liquid Valkyrie with the slowing effect and the tagline Maximum Pain are clear references to the Max Payne series, which features slowing time effects as a primary game mechanic. The name and nature as a performance-enhancing drug is likely a nod to Valkyr, a similar drug from the Max Payne games. The Bloody Eye item's name and appearance are all from Cowboy Bebop, which features a time-slowing drug called Red Eye. The synergy name Tears of Blood is likely a reference to the Binding of Isaac, which has multiple ways to fire blood tears to attack. The old Night Flask having an orange color scheme and recharging heal effect are all taken from the Estus Flask from the Dark Souls series. Similarly, the Armor of Thorns effect and name are direct references to Kirk, the Knight of Thorns in Dark Souls 3, whose armor set allows the player to damage enemies by rolling into them. The tagline, "Your body is a weapon," is likely a reference to the song by the Wombats. The Full Metal Jacket item may be a reference to the movie of the same name from 1987. The ticket item with the phrase "ticket to the gun show" tends to refer to someone showing off their muscles, which is a prominent feature of the Gatling Gull's design. The item may be a reference to 1993's The Last Action Hero, in which a golden ticket allows the protagonist to transport himself into an action movie. The heavy boots may have their appearance taken from the lead boots item from the Crypt of the Necrodancer. They may also be a reference to the iron boots, which are a recurring item from the Legend of Zelda series. The gun boots with the red and white shots, the name, and the tagline "They Go Down Well" are all reference to another Devolver Digital game, Downwell. The red trail that the player leaves is taken directly from the visual effects of the gem high status in that game as well. The Spring-Heel Boots' name is likely a reference to Spring-Heeled Jack, an urban legend from Victorian England who reportedly could jump great heights over 3 meters. The rat boots having the effect and mention of them being stolen from a pointy-eared adventurer make them a reference to the hover boots from The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. The ice cube is a pun on the gaming term cooldown, used to refer to the time period that game items in effect need to pass before they can be used again. Taking this literally, having an ice cube cools down your items faster, which is also lampshaded by the effect of the coolness stat. The cigarettes item having a red and white carton is very closely associated with the Marlboro brand of cigarettes. The cigarettes being a power-up that can trade health for a benefit also appears in the Metal Gear Solid games, where they can be used to reveal lasers. The magazine rack with the synergy name Just Shoot Me is a reference to the sitcom of the same name where the characters work at a fashion magazine. The appearance of the charm horn item might be a reference to the Horn of Gondor seen in The Lord of the Rings, with the tagline "The Call of Duty" being a play on the Call of Duty franchise. The entire name of the Cog of Battle is a play on the name of the game series Gears of War, which features a similar active reload mechanic. The sprite featuring a cog with a skull in the center is the logo for the Gears of War games as well. The metronome's name and effect of using the same attack multiple times in a row to increase damage is heavily reminiscent of the item of the same name in the Pokemon games. The honeycomb's name and effect are almost identical to the honeycomb item from Terraria, which is a drop from the queen bee and similarly spawns bees when damaged. The Gungeon Blueprint's tagline "Procedurally Updates" is a reference to procedural generation, the process that most roguelike games use to create randomized maps. Thus, a procedurally updating map would be needed to map every layout of the Gungeon. The sense of direction being a compass that points towards the boss of the floor is a staple item from the Legend of Zelda series. The duct tape might have taken the idea of taping 2 guns together to fire them at the same time from the plot point in Aliens, which has the protagonist tape an AR and a flamethrower together into one weapon in order to fight. The Gungeon Pepper's tagline "The Heat Is On" could be a reference to the 1984 song by Glenn Frey. The various colors of Guanstone are all in reference to the Ioun stones from Dungeons & Dragons, which confer various benefits and come in different colors. The appearance and color scheme of the pink Guanstone resembles the life crystals found in Terraria, and some iterations of the heart container in The Legend of Zelda, specifically the one found in Twilight Princess. The glass Guanstone mentions the Lady of Pain, which may be a play on the Lady of Pain from the Forgotten Realms in Dungeons & Dragons. The Iron Coin item is a reference to Game of Thrones, in which Arya Stark makes a deal to kill 3 people in her name with the assassin Jaqen H'ghar, who gives her an iron coin that will allow her to meet with the Faceless Men and join their order of assassins. The tagline, Valar Morghulis, is a play on Valar Morghulis, which in Game of Thrones translates to All Men Must Die and is the motto of the Faceless Men. The Super Hot Watch's name and effect are a direct homage to the game Super Hot, which features the primary gameplay mechanic where time only moves when the player does. The Holy Grail is a play on the Holy Grail from Arthurian mythos, a relic that appeared in various stories of King Arthur, being the subject of a long quest. The appearance of the Blood Brooch item resembles the red jeweled brooch from Bloodborne, while the tagline What Music They Make is taken from a line from Bram Stoker's Dracula. Listen to them, children of the night, what music they make. The backup gun, being a gun taped to the player's back, is a reference to the end of Die Hard, which features John McClane taping a Beretta 92F to his back. The synergy name Gruber's Bane is a reference to Die Hard's antagonist, Hans Gruber. The sunglasses item with the effect of slowing time during explosions is a reference to a recurring bit of cinematography where a character is shown to be cooler by walking towards the camera with an explosion behind them, often in slow motion. This is commonly known as the Cool Guys Don't Look at Explosions meme, which was popularized by a song of the same name by The Lonely Island. The tagline Bright Future is a reference to a song by Timbuk 3 titled The Future's So Bright I Gotta Wear Shades. The escape rope's name and effect of taking you out of a room is taken from the Pokemon franchise. In those games, the escape rope item can be used to warp the player from inside caves or dungeons straight to the entrance. The name of the wax wings item is taken from the story of Icarus in Greek mythology, who escaped imprisonment with his father Daedalus but died after flying too close to the sun, which softened the wax and caused him to fall into the ocean after his wings fell apart. This is where the tagline Too Close to the Gun comes from. The blast helmet's color scheme may be a reference to Marvin the Martian from Looney Tunes, or from Mega Man as he appeared in the TV show Captain N the Game Master. The Lament Configurum's name, appearance as a puzzle box, and effect of summoning cursed items and enemies from Bullet Hell are all an homage to the Lament configuration that appears in the movie Hellraiser. The synergy name Heart-Shaped Box is likely a reference to Nirvana's song of the same name. The Monster Blood item is a recurring substance from the Goosebumps series by R.L. Stine, with the tagline Twist to Open referencing the twist top can that Monster Blood appears in that series. The Nanomachines item's name, tagline, and effect of gaining armor from taking damage are all references to Senator Armstrong's nanomachines from Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. The name and massively increased luck provided by the 7-leaf clover item are a reference to Fry's 7-leaf clover from Futurama, with the synergy name Breakfast Club alluding to the detail that Fry hid the clover inside a Breakfast Club vinyl. The sprite and name of the number 2 item are likely a reference to Afro Samurai, who has a bandana marking him the second strongest warrior as the plot follows his quest to become the strongest and reclaim his father's number 1 bandana. The uranium amulet mentions a woman who researched irradiated metals and founded the basis of further technology, which is a reference to Marie Curie, who discovered the elements radium and polonium and similarly died to a lifetime of exposure to radiation, but founded a lot of the science of radiation in the process. The Chaos Amulet's tagline, What Can Will, is a paraphrasing of What Can Go Wrong Will Go Wrong, also known as Murphy's Law. The Ammonomicon entries for the table text all make mention of a book called the Tabla Sutra, a handbook about flipping tables, which is a play on the Kama Sutra. The Heart Holster's tagline On Your Sleeve is a reference to the phrase wearing your heart on your sleeve, and the synergy name The Quick and the Gun Dead is a reference to the 1995 film The Quick and the Dead. All of the heart items in Gungeon are containers of various sorts, a pun on the various heart containers of the Zelda franchise. The tagline Memento Mori in the Heart Locket is a Latin phrase that means Remember You Will Die. A similarly named item appears in the game Undertale. The 6th chamber with the association of the number 6 with bullet hell and the curse mechanic is a reference to the number of the beast 666, which is described in the Book of Revelations in the Bible. The ancient hero's bandana effect and name are likely a reference to the Infinity bandana found in Metal Gear Solid, with the ancient hero in the name likely being Snake. The Bloodied Scarf's effect, visual appearance, and Ammonomicon entry are all a reference to the PS2 game Shinobi and its main character, Hatsuma. The red scarf that trails behind the player may also be a reference to Hyperlight Drifter. The synergy name Raizo's Stuff potentially is a reference to the character from the movie Ninja Assassin. The muscle relaxant item and synergy name Diazepam are a reference to a type of muscle relaxant found in the Metal Gear Solid series. The Sponge's tagline Godliness is a reference to the phrase cleanliness is next to godliness. The Ammonomicon line mentioning hearing the whispers of an alien tongue is a reference to Alienese, a made-up language that appears multiple times throughout the show Futurama. Everything about the Gun Soul item is a reference to Dark Souls, with the tagline You Defeated potentially being a reference to the iconic You Died message when the player is killed in that series, and also a reference to the previous version of the Victory Achieved text after killing a boss. The synergy name Praise the Gun is a reference to Praise the Sun, an iconic line from Dark Souls, and the effect of this item mimics the retrieval mechanic from Dark Souls, with the fires spawned by the Praise the Gun synergy mimicking the effect of the bonfires from the Souls series. The Skeleton Key is a reference to Skeleton Keys, a type of key that can potentially open any lock with the right keyhole. The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim features a Daedric artifact of the same name that the player can use to pick any lock that features in the Thieves Guild questline, which may be referenced by needing to steal to unlock this item. The Brick of Cash having a synergy named Cash Rules Everything Around Me is a reference to Cream of the Wu-Tang Clan. The Battle Standard having the effect of buffing companions and having the appearance of a red banner with a gold symbol closely resembles the Banner of Command, an item from League of Legends that has since been removed. The Wolf Ammonomicon entry is likely a reference to Hachiko, a dog that waited for its owner 10 years after their death. It may also be a reference to Seymour from Futurama, whose owner was similarly frozen in a cryopod and transported to the future. The item's appearance as a handkerchief is a reference to Metal Gear Solid, given to Snake by Otacon during a prison escape and originally belonging to Sniper Wolf. The owl item with the synergy name Special Delivery is likely a reference to Harry Potter's owl, Hedwig. The idea of an owl follower that protects the player may also be a reference to the owl drones found in Killzone Shadowfall. The Super Space Turtle and the idea of the turtle hero protecting the planet may be a reference to Gamera, a kaiju similar to Godzilla that protects the Earth. The synergy Elephant in the Room may be a reference to Discworld, in which the world is carried on the back of 4 elephants atop a giant turtle. The tagline for Gold Junk, One Man's Trash, refers to the phrase, One man's trash is another man's treasure. The R2-G2 item's name, shape, and tagline are all references to the astromech droids from the Star Wars series, most notably R2-D2. The description describing serving drinks to undead is a reference to the similar scene found in Return of the Jedi. The badge item spawns an aged police follower who is close to retirement, who shows you pictures of his kids and generally shows how good his life is before dying, which is a common trope in cop media such as Lethal Weapon. The officer's quote mentioning a character named McNutty may be a reference to Jimmy McNulty, a similarly unpredictable character from The Wire. The synergy effect To Serve Android is a play on the RoboCop series, turning the police officer into an immortal robot. The Chicken Flute item having the sprite of an ocarina and the effect of chickens swarming enemies when attacked are references to the Kukos of the Zelda series. The Space Friend item has an appearance very reminiscent to the player's ship in the arcade game shoot-'em-up series Raiden, with the Space Best Friend synergy swapping it to the Player 2 color scheme. The pig item's effect may be a reference to the German movie Siegfried, which has a similar scene where a pig saves the protagonist by jumping in front of an arrow. The item being a blue ribbon may be a reference to the blue ribbons given to livestock at animal shows, which is the main plot point of Charlotte's Web, which also features a pig as the protagonist. The synergy Return is a reference to the game over screen of The Legend of Zelda 2, which shows the text Return of Ganon in all caps. The pig turning green may also be a reference to the green pigs in the Angry Birds series. The turkey item giving a reward for getting 3 shots in a row is a reference to the sport of bowling, in which 3 strikes in a row is called a turkey. The appearance of the item itself is a reference to a common method of drawing turkeys done by children, by tracing one's hand with the thumb forming the head and the fingers forming the tail feathers. The name Sprun and tagline The Way of Guns are references to Spren from the Stormlight Archive, with the first book of which being called The Way of Kings. The Wind Gunner is a reference to the Wind Runner, a type of radiant the Spren can turn into. The Riddle of Lead's item and tagline, This You Can Trust, are a reference to the Riddle of Steel found in 1982's Conan the Barbarian. The bracket key's appearance, function, and tagline are all a meta reference to the development of Gungeon itself, with the right bracket key likely being used to clear rooms instantly so the developers could test things without having to clear through the game normally. The Elder Blank having a synergy named Blank Generation might be a reference to the album of the same name by Richard Hell and the Voidoids. The Yellow Chamber's name and effect are likely a reference to Robert W. Chambers' book, The King in Yellow, with the faded rune mentioned by the Ammonomicon potentially being the yellow symbol featured in that book. The various enemies that populate the halls of the Gungeon have no shortage of references either. Starting with the Bulletkin, the entire idea of the gun dead might be a reference to the phrase live ammunition, taken a bit more literally. The Minelets found in the Black Powder Mine have the ability to hide under an invincible hard hat, which is likely a reference to Mets from the Mega Man games. The Ashen Bulletkin having the name Cinderfella is likely a reference to Cinderella, a classic fairy tale. The mutated Bulletkin's tagline Old Filthful is a play on Old Faithful, the geyser named for its reliable timing in erupting. The Key Bulletkin rushing through danger and tempting Gungeoneers into following them through the other enemies might be a concept taken from the Crystal Lizards in the Dark Souls series, which have valuable loot and run through other enemies from the player. This may also be taken from the Wandering Madness from Bloodborne. The Red Shotgunkin's tagline, Red Dead, is likely a reference to the game Red Dead Redemption. The Mutant Shotgunkin having the tagline, Gats Don't Shiv, and the appearance are likely references to Batman The Dark Knight Returns and its mutant gang. The Professionals are likely taking the name and appearance from the movie Leon the Professional, which is likely the source of the tagline, The Gummies Ammonomicon entry mentioning pulling the slug out through the casing is a reference to mummification practiced in ancient Egypt, which involved pulling organs out of the body with long hooks. The Bombshee's name and ability to wail is taken from the Banshee, a type of undead monster that had a piercing shriek that warned of impending death. The Ledulon's tagline, L1000, is a reference to the T1000 from Terminator that were made of a similar liquid metal and are similarly defeated by being melted down. The Pupulon's tagline, Great Mighty, is a reference to Conker's Bad Fur Day and the boss, the Great Mighty Pooh. The name and behavior of the GG enemy might be a reference to the Peepee, a robotic bird Mega Man enemy that drops eggs from above. Chanspelons having an icosahedral shape make them reminiscent of a D20, with their rare attacks of dying instantly or using all their attacks at once being a reference to Dungeons & Dragons, with critical failures on a 1 and critical successes on a 20. The Apprentice Gungeoneers' attack patterns are square, circle, X, and triangle, which are likely a reference to the face buttons on a PlayStation controller. They may also be a reference to the appearance of spells cast by Magikoopas in the Mario series. The theme of having various colors of mage robes with different magic and an obscured face may be a reference to Final Fantasy's Black Mages. The Jammer Lengo's name is a play on the Camerlengo, an office in the Roman Catholic Church that manages the finances and property within the Holy See, which is where the Vatican is located. The Mimic is a classic monster from Dungeons & Dragons that can shape itself to look like inanimate objects, often taking the form of chests to prey on adventurers. The gray slab-like appearance of the Wall Mimic and its ability to attack by falling forward are likely a reference to the Womp enemy from the Mario series. The Gun Fairy's appearance and the idea of fairies living in pots are both a reference to the Zelda series. The ability to use the bottle item on this enemy is also a mechanic in the Zelda games. The Gat's design and behavior are both reminiscent of the enemy Telly found in the Mega Man games. The Gunzuki and Gunzaki are very reminiscent of the design of the Bubble Dragons, which star as the main characters of the Bubble Bobble games, with the name coming from Godzuki, the supposed nephew of Godzilla. The Tombstoner enemy might have been inspired by the Ripper, another animate tombstone enemy found in Banjo-Kazooie. The Gun Nut, Spectral Gun Nut, and Chain Gunner are all based on the Dark Nut, a recurring armored enemy from the Zelda games, with the Weak Link tagline for the Chain Gunner referencing the protagonist of those games. The Fun Gun and Spoger enemies' parent-child relationship might be a reference to the Dark Souls Mushroom Child and Mushroom Parent enemies. The Mountain Cube's exact design is taken from Dodge Roll's earlier game, Fork Parker's Holiday Profit Hike, in which they wear sweaters that are alluded to by the Ammonomicon entry. The Flesh Cube's tagline, Pound of Flesh, is likely taken from Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice. The design of the cube with faces on each side may be a reference to the Tox Box from the Mario series. The Lead Maiden's design is based on the Iron Maiden, a supposed torture device that is associated with the Middle Ages despite little evidence of actually being used. The Misfire Beast's design and ability to disappear are a reference to Dungeons & Dragons' Displacer Beast, which are quadrupeds that can similarly project illusions of themselves to trick attackers. The Phaser Spider's name is a combination of phasers from Star Trek, with the tagline "Set Spiders to Gun" being a play on Star Trek's "Set Phasers to Stun" line, and the Phase Spider, a Dungeons & Dragons monster that can move in and out of the ethereal plane to hunt. The Killithid, like the Mind Flayer, are an homage to Dungeons & Dragons' Illithids, or Mind Flayers. The tagline "Tactical Eldritch Action" is a play on Tactical Espionage Action, the tagline of the Metal Gear Solid series. The symbols that form above the Killithid while it's attacking are directly taken from the PlayStation controller. The design of the Gripmaster enemy is directly inspired by the Wallmaster, a recurring disembodied hand enemy from the Legend of Zelda games. The drawings in the Ammonomicon entry show it doing a thumbs up and devil horn gesture, the latter of which is often associated with metal music. The Tarnisher, with its design and mention of likes guns from the Ammonomicon, is a reference to the Like, a recurring enemy that will attempt to swallow Link and steal his equipment in The Legend of Zelda. If the player has the Shield of the Maiden, it will be stolen if they're hit by a Tarnisher, which is another behavior taken from the Like. The color scheme and diet consisting of weapons may also be a reference to the Rust monster from Dungeons & Dragons. The Shambling Round's name may be a play on the Dungeons & Dragons monster, the Shambling Mound, with the design being made in reference of totem poles created by indigenous peoples in North America. The Skeleton, with its ability to collapse into a skull and resurrect itself, is a staple of multiple skeletal enemies in video games, most notably the Dry Bones of the Mario series and Stalfos of the Legends of Zelda series. The Agonizer's tagline and design of a stone mask may be a reference to the stone masks of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, with this design being most reminiscent of Karz's stone mask. The Gun Reaper's black cloak and scythe are hallmarks of the design of the Grim Reaper, a psychopomp figure that shepherds souls of the dead. The Lord of the Damned is described in the Ammonomicon entry as being an immortal being that cannot be bargained or reasoned with and hunts its prey without mercy or compassion, which is a direct quote from 1984's Terminator. Fusilier is a mini-boss that the player can encounter in multiple chambers of the Gungeon. The design and minions in this boss fight reference Bowser in his Koopa clown car and the Mecha Koopas he spawns at the end of Super Mario World. The name is a pun on fuse since they're a bomb, and fusiliers, which were soldiers who carried fusil rifles. Moving on to the bosses found throughout the Gungeon. Gatling Gull wielding a minigun and being a bird is a reference to Vulcan Raven from the Metal Gear Solid series. The death animation also matches Vulcan Ravens of being eaten/consumed by birds. The Bullet King in the Keep of the Lead Lord has the tagline "On the Lead Throne," and said throne is made out of many guns fused together. This is a reference to the Iron Throne in Game of Thrones. Blobulord is referenced as a 4-star general, which mimics the ranking of American generals by using a number of stars. Gorgon. Her name and ability to turn people to stone are in reference to the Gorgon sisters of Greek mythology, with the name Medusae being a pun on Medusa and the Uzi guns she wields. Notably, Medusa was the only one of the 3 Gorgon sisters that was fully mortal. When fighting her, her petrifying gaze attack can be dodged by simply looking away, referencing the fact that the Gorgon's gaze only works if you are looked directly in the eyes. The Gorgon turns to stone on death, which is a popular twist to monster with petrifying gazes being defeated by being shown their own reflection. In the original myth, Medusa's reflection was specifically shown to be safe when Perseus uses a mirrored bronze shield to see where Medusa is while he fought her. If the player shoots her stone form, her head will pop off while her body crumbles, referencing how Perseus decapitates Medusa in the original myth. The Ammoconda has bullet patterns that make sharp 90-degree turns while traveling laterally, and can also eat its own minions to grow in length. These are both features of the video game Snake. The Beholster's appearance, name, and eye-beam attack are all references to Dungeons & Dragons' Beholder monster. Having a gun in each of its tentacle stalks references the D&D Beholder's many eyes, which each fire rays with various effects, such as petrification, charming, and disintegration. A very rare 1 in 1000 glitch chest can bring the player to a boss fight versus 2 Beholders with twitching textures and corrupted text. This may be a reference to wrong warping glitches, where a player is erroneously taken to a new area or scene via glitching, often used to warp to the end of games and speedruns that allow such glitches. The master of the Abbey of the True Gun is the Old King, with the name and appearance being a reference to Demon Souls' Old King Doran. The tagline Eternal Warrior is likely a reference to the drop known as the Eternal Warrior's Ring, which also describes its former bearer living forever as a demigod, exactly how the Ammonomicon entry for the Old King describes him. The Black Powder Mines' Canon Balrog is a reference to the Balrog found in the Mines of Moria in the Lord of the Rings series. The Ammonomicon entry titled Guns in the Deep refers to the drums in the deep heard by the dwarves who dug too far in the mines. The phrase "you shall not pass" is a reference to the iconic line Gandalf says while fighting the Balrog. The Mind Flayer's name and appearance are references to the Mind Flayers of Dungeons & Dragons, who were in turn inspired by the appearance of Cthulhu from H.P. Lovecraft's Call of Cthulhu. The Ammonomicon mentions them not being native to Gungeon, which is a reference to the Mind Flayer's lore of not having a clear origin. The tagline "A Sinister Bell Rings" references an item from Bloodborne, also called the Sinister Bell. Blockner, being an armored knight focused on blocking as opposed to dodge rolling, is likely a reference to the Dark Souls games, where there is often a trade-off between being able to roll properly or block large amounts of damage. Onto the Hollow, we have the Wallmonger. The idea of a huge wall enemy that advances towards the player may be an homage to Terraria's Wall of Flesh, Final Fantasy's Demon Walls, or the living wall enemy from Dungeons & Dragons. Secret of Mana also had the Wall Face, and Nuclear Throne had a boss also titled Wallmonger. Having a wall made of embedded stone corpses may be a reference to the Source Wall of DC Comics, although a lot smaller in scale. The High Priest is the first of the Order of the True Gun, and the attack patterns and appearance are heavily influenced by the Dark Bishop from the game Hexen. The pre-fight art of the High Priest is a reference to Ningauble of the Seven Eyes from Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. His appearance of having a gun for a head may be a reference to Juzo Inui from the anime No Gun's life. The Kill Pillars' first phase of having 4 coordinated bosses chasing the player and trying to stomp them references the Armos Knights from The Legend of Zelda. Once 3 of them are defeated, the final phase, Calibur, is a reference to the Hindu goddess Kali, an aspect of the war goddess Durga who embodies the chaos and brutality of war and violence. The appearance of having multiple arms carrying various objects is also heavily tied to Kali. The first final boss and great beast of the Forge, the High Dragon, is potentially a reference to Smaug from The Hobbit, with the pre-fight art showing them submerged in a pile of shells, which are the game's currency, which mirrors how Smaug from The Hobbit hides in a pile of coins. Having a red dragon as the final boss may be a D&D reference, where red dragons are often featured on the cover of source books and often serve as final antagonists due to their high power and legendary status. The secret phase, the Advanced Dragon, added in the Advanced Gungeons & Dragons update, is a reference to the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons edition of D&D. The High Dragon absorbing the essence of the smaller wormling and powering up may be a reference to the dragon souls found in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. The true final boss and the master of the Gungeon, the Lich, is a reference to D&D's Liches, which are a type of undead who are made immortal by putting their soul into a phylactery, allowing them to retain their intelligence beyond death. Being called the Gungeon Master in their tagline may also play into the person who runs the game in D&D being called a Dungeon Master. The fact that this is the future and/or past form of the Gunslinger and the black color scheme of their clothes may be a reference to Lee Van Cleef in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which is reaffirmed by the first phase taking place in a cemetery. The Door Lord is a boss that can appear on multiple floors in the Gungeon. As a mimic, this boss is a reference to Dungeons & Dragons mimic enemies, but is much larger in size, potentially being an example of the Dire mimic. Having a leader of the mimics might imply that the Gungeon is home to a mimic colony, a sort of superstructure of mimics in D&D where they come together to build large structures or lure in prey together. The Resourceful Rat has a maze-like design for their floor, which is likely a reference to rats in a maze experiments which test their problem-solving skills. The phrase rats in a maze can also refer to a person or group trapped in a confusing or labyrinthine place or situation, which perfectly describes the floor. The idea of rats hoarding items often comes from pack rats, which often build nests out of stolen items. The giant mechanical rat in the second phase is a reference to the titular Metal Gears of Metal Gear Solid, specifically resembling Metal Gear Rex. In the game files, the mech is even referred to as Metal Gear Rat. The enemies spawned by the rat in his floor and his second phase resemble mousers, small mouse-like robots that were found in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle series. The third and final phase of the rat is a direct reference to the Punch-Out series, which features similar quick-time openings to deal damage and get super punches on your opponent. Battling hand-to-hand on top of a destroyed mech is also a reference to Metal Gear Solid's battle against Liquid Snake on top of Metal Gear Rex. After telling you his backstory before he dies, the rat asks you to remove your mask so he can see your face with his own eyes. This may be a reference to Darth Vader's last request to Luke in Star Wars, except instead of being heartwarming, he just insults you by calling you ugly. The tagline, "Say cheese and die" in the Ammonomicon is a reference to one of the names of the Goosebumps books by R.L. Stine. Aghanim returns as the boss of the RNG department, with his opening title card saying Cam Clark as Aghanim. Cam Clark is the voice actor for Liquid Snake in the Metal Gear Solid series, and fighting against a helicopter on top of a building is a further reference to the Hind D in Metal Gear Solid. When killed by Aghanim here, he can say that the player will make a beautiful sacrifice, which may be a reference to Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, which Link's blood is needed to resurrect Ganon. The RNG department may be a reference to Dodge Roll's own offices, which would be a permanent limbo for any unused enemies, which is why Aghanim is potentially imprisoned here. The unused enemies all reference various unused floors found in the game's files. Not everyone in the Gungeon is out to kill you, however. The shopkeeper Bello has a cat named Ocelot, which may be a reference to Revolver Ocelot from Metal Gear Solid. Bello's tendency to punish thieves with blasts from a shotgun, however, may be inspired by Spelunky's notoriously trigger-happy shopkeepers. Ox and Cadence have a quest to return Ox's new arm from the forge with a series of balloons, which may be a reference to Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain, which features Venom Snake, who has a bionic arm, and the Fulton surface-to-air recovery system, which also takes the form of balloons that lift things away. The drunkard who is found in the breach peppers sad laughter throughout his speech patterns, which is a reference to the crestfallen warrior from Dark Souls. One of his stories mentions a Gungeoneer named Theodore of Ras, who was known for their speed but faltered at the last moment, which is a reference to speedrunner Teddy Ras, who made it to the Forge twice before dying during the charity event Summer Games Done Quick. Freyfel and Grey Mauser are two NPCs that you can rescue from the Gungeon. Their name and appearance are a reference to Fafhrd in the Grey Mouser by Fritz Lieber, which Freyfel is a portmanteau of the former and rifle, and Mauser is a German brand of gun. While on one of his rainbow runs, Bowler can be seen on top of the chests that aren't rainbow chests to prevent you from opening them. Bowler will sometimes stand up with his arms held up at an angle, a reference to the Praise the Sun pose. Gunsling King and Man Cervantes are a duo who will make bets with the player throughout their run. Man Cervantes is a portmanteau of manservant and Cervantes, the last name of Miguel de Cervantes, author of Don Quixote. The character dynamic of a noble and their valet may also be a reference to Don Quixote and Sancho Panza, or that of Zap Brannigan and Kif Crocker from Futurama, who also share their color scheme. The idea of a man making bets with other characters living through a life-threatening ordeal may be also a reference to Kressner from Stephen King's The Ledge. Sir Manual from the tutorial is likely a play on User Manual, which are often found in game cases and explain how to play the game. The secret NPC Monster Manual is a reference to the sourcebook for Dungeons & Dragons, with the added reference to the Binding of Isaac's same reference to D&D, which spells the item Monster Manuel in some versions, which has become a bit of a meme within the community. The cursed shopkeeper Cursula may say give in to your hatred if the player fires on her with a gun. This is a quote from Darth Sidious in the Star Wars series. The sentient blank Old Red might be a reference to the song Ol' Red by Blake Shelton. The Lost Adventurer NPC has the appearance directly taken from Link of the Zelda series, with the green cap and pointed ears. The dialogue stated that they already checked inside the pots as a reference to how pickups are often found in pots in those games. Their dialogue when being shot at, saying, "Hey listen, stop that," is a reference to Navi from The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, who has become infamous for chiming in with "hey, look and listen" throughout that game. His idea to study the old maps of the Gungeon and try to discern a pattern may be a reference to the Maze Runner, in which the characters attempt to employ a similar strategy to find a way out of an ever-shifting maze. The Goop shopkeeper Professor Goopton speaks in the fictional Alienese from the show Futurama. With the sponge item equipped, the player can understand Goopton's Alienese, which simply replaces each English letter with a corresponding symbol, which turns out to actually be a series of insults about the player's non-goopy appearance. The shopkeeper Flint, with his role as a sentient lock, is a reference to flintlocks, a type of firing mechanism found on old guns. His origin story as a lock that wasn't actually connected to a door after the Gungeon shifted may be a reference to sometimes nonsensical layouts created by procedural generation and roguelike games. The Sorceress unlocks the Blessed Game mode, which constantly changes the player's gun when certain conditions are met. This is likely a reference to a game mode in Counter-Strike called Gungeon, which is the same name as the achievement for clearing this mode. Tonic the Sledge Dog is a blue-themed animal with the ability to go fast, which is a reference to Sonic the Hedgehog. The line for refusing turbo mode, "You're too slow," is also a Sonic line that was used as a taunt in the Smash Bros. Series. If the player has activated turbo mode and declines to turn it off, he will say, "I'm a chili dog," which is a reference to chili dogs, which are one of Sonic's favorite food and the trophy for completing turbo mode. Tonic can also mention a Dr. Robot Nick, which is a reference to Dr. Eggman's real name, Dr. Ivo Robotnik. If the player approaches Tonic with 5,000 or more hegemony credits, he will ask for 90% of the player's current credits to start turbo mode. If the player agrees, the next time they see him, he will have a golden fur coat, referencing Sonic's powered-up form, Super Sonic. The fact that Tonic has a basket of onion rings next to him is likely a reference to the ring pickups from the Sonic games. Multiple streamers got extra dialogue when talking to Tonic for their role in popularizing Gungeon on Twitch and YouTube. This list includes Retromation, Cobalt Streak, Last Grey Wolf, who now goes by Dumb Dog, Barbed Wire TV, Richard Hammer, Northern Lion, and Sleep Cycles, with Northern Lions mentioning knowing a different Eggman once being a reference to Dr. Eggman. When talking to the streamer Sleep Cycles, Tonic mentions that you don't want to make him go get his Knuckles, which is a reference to Knuckles the Echidna from the Sonic series. The Challenge Mode character Daisuke has an appearance of a 20-sided die, and he gives dialogue if Challenge Mode is already active, giving random numbers from 1 to 20. The added dialogue in a 1 and a 20 are references to Dungeons & Dragons. Challenge Mode is also a wealth of other references. The Blobulin Rancher modifier is a reference to the Slime Rancher game. Cursed Ceramics are a reference to the Curse Jars from Dark Souls 2. Explosive Pyres is a reference to the game Destiny. Ghost of the Shell is a reference to the anime Ghost in the Shell. The High Stress modifier effect and icon are a reference to Darkest Dungeon. The Long Live the King modifier may be a reference to the game Reigns or the movie The Lion King. The Extremely Bad Chess modifier is a reference to the game Really Bad Chess. Don't Blink is a reference to a Doctor Who episode of the same name. Thermal Clips is a reference to the Mass Effect series. Night's Watch is a reference to the Night's Watch in Game of Thrones. Dark Was the Night is a reference to the song Dark Was the Night, Cold Was the Ground by Blind Willie Johnson. Hammer Time is a reference to the catchphrase Stop Hammer Time in the song Can't Touch This by MC Hammer. Something Wicked is part of a quote from Shakespeare's Macbeth, Something Wicked This Way Comes. And finally, Dragon Rage may be a reference to the Pokemon move Dragon Rage. The nurses, Patches and Mendy, give a treatment to the player of smashing a bottled fairy over their head, which heals them to full health. This is a reference to the Zelda series' bottled fairies. Patches having a red nose may be a reference to the real-life Dr. Patch Adams, who was played by Robin Williams. Mendy's name could then be a play on Mork and Mindy, another show that Robin Williams starred in. The Synergy salesman Sinner Grace has a quote saying, "Let's see if love really can bloom on the battlefield." This is a paraphrasing of a line from Otakon in Metal Gear Solid saying, "Do you think love can bloom even on a battlefield?" The vampire you sell your HP to has various lines that are all references to Bram Stoker's Dracula, including, "I've crossed oceans of time to find this place. Do you believe in destiny? That even the powers of time can be altered for a singular purpose? The luckiest alive is the one who finds the gun." And the line, "I'm also a werewolf, it's true," may be a reference to the rivalry between vampires and werewolves popularized by the Twilight series. In the original Bram Stoker novel, Dracula was capable of transforming into and commanding wolves. The line, "Life sucks, then you're jammed," may be a play on the quote from Albert Camus, "Life is suffering, and then you die." The Secret Room NPC witches are a trio of witches that have the ability to increase curse, which may be a reference to Shakespeare's Macbeth. The old man you can find in secret rooms who gives you an item and focuses on loneliness is a reference to the NPC from the start of the first Legend of Zelda, who says, "It's dangerous to go alone, take this," when giving Link his first sword. The open flames on either side of him are also made to emulate his room in that game. The NPC Brother Alburn has multiple questions that are Monty Python references. His question, "What is thine favorite color?" is likely a reference to the Keeper of the Bridge of Death in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and the option to answer "punks like you" when asked "What dost thou eat for breakfast?" is potentially another Monty Python reference to 1969's Monty Python's Flying Circus. The black market entrance that you can sometimes find on a run takes the form of a giant green demon mouth, which is a reference to the Tomb of Annihilation in Dungeons & Dragons, an infamously difficult dungeon built by Acererak the Archlich. The face dispensing an item when a player fires a water gun into its mouth is likely a reference to water gun games found at carnivals that give prizes when a player fires enough water into a clown's mouth. If the player steals from a shop on their run, NPCs such as Winchester and the Resourceful Rat may refer to the player as Thief in place of the usual nicknames for that Gungeoneer. This is a reference to The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, where stealing from the shop would cause all NPCs to refer to Link as Thief for the rest of the playthrough. Throughout the Gungeon, you can find various shrines that you can pray to for effects, some of which have references. The Ammo Shrine to Sheltan, the Ammo Elemental, is likely a reference to Shaitan, a demonic entity also known as the Dark One that appears in the Wheel of Time series. This name also appears to describe another demonic entity in the Warhammer 40k universe. The Blood Shrine's tagline, Kalibur Ma Shakti Da, is a reference to Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which features the line Kali Ma Shakti Da. This line is delivered by the antagonist Mola Ram before ripping out the heart of a sacrificial victim, and roughly translates to "Mother Kali, give me strength," as a prayer to Kali, who Calibur stands in for in the Gungeon. The appearance, effect, and inspect text of the YV shrine being a shrine to the gun gods are all a reference to Vlambeer's game Gun Gods, with the depicted character being young Venus. YV is also a playable character in Nuclear Throne, whose special ability Pop Pop that the shrine grants can fire multiple bullets at once and has a theme of hoarding wealth, hence the increasing monetary cost to use the shrine. The Cleanse Shrine allows the player to purge all curse that they have accrued. The pose struck by the statue in the center and the ability to cleanse the player of their sins is likely a reference to the Buddy Christ statue found in 1999's Dogma. The fairies surrounding the statue and the appearance as a fountain may also be a reference to the fairy fountains found throughout the Zelda games, which also often feature bright blue water. The Dice Shrine is dedicated to icosahedrons, with the icosahedron being the 20-sided shape that is used for d20s. The name icosahedrons is likely a portmanteau of icosahedron and Gary Gygax, the creator of Dungeons & Dragons. Gungeon's extensive referencing skills also apply to its achievements. The name "I Knew Someone Would Do It" and "Why" for the achievement for pushing a table into a pit is likely a reference to a developer conversation, the unlock method being a weird interaction between two objects in the game. The Biggest Wallet achievement is potentially a reference to the Legend of Zelda series' wallet upgrades, with 300 being a common number for one of the wallets in the game to have. The Big Wallet in the Minish Cap specifically holds 300 rupees. The achievement Demolition Man for rolling into a frozen enemy and shattering them is a reference to the movie Demolition Man. The 3 seashells in the icon are a reference to a gag from the movie. The Pit Lord achievement has a pose of a character jumping over a pit in the exact pose that is used by Mario in all of his games. The icon for the Day Ruiner achievement is reminiscent of the troll face, an early 2010s internet meme. The Lion Leap achievement features a bald man on the icon, which is a reference to Northern Lion, who would often fall into pits during his YouTube playthroughs. The Gungeon Master achievement, featuring the Lich sitting behind a 3-fold screen, is a reference to the Dungeon Master in Dungeons & Dragons, with the G&D on the screen being a reference to the abbreviation D&D. The Exorcist achievement may be a reference to the movie The Exorcist. The achievement for beating the robots past, called Terminated, is a reference to the movie Terminator. The name of the Hero of Gun achievement for beating the bullets past is a reference to Link's many titles throughout the series, such as Hero of Time or Hero of Twilight. The Woodsy Lord achievement is a reference to the game Thief, where the main antagonist, the Trickster, describes themselves as such. The achievement text for the Jammed achievement is, "You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you?" This is a reference to a line spoken by the Happy Mask Salesman in The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. The Let God achievement shows a bearded figure holding 2 large bullets on either side, which is very reminiscent of depictions of Moses holding the 10 Commandments. The name of the Money Pit achievement and the unlock method of dropping chandeliers on enemies are a reference to the 1986 film The Money Pit. The achievement named Castle Crasher is likely a reference to the beat-em-up game Castle Crashers. And there we have it, every single media reference that I could figure out in Enter the Gungeon. Impossibly, it still seems that there may be more references that I missed, which you should put in the comments to show how uncultured I am. Enter the Gungeon remains a timeless classic of the roguelite genre, and I find myself coming back to it over and over again, which might mean that I'm trapped in a time loop. Well, without a gun to kill my own past, I guess I'm stuck playing one of the best roguelikes I've ever had. Thanks for watching.